Okay, we're alive. You're all set.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to the Lewiston School Committee workshop regarding the graduation for the high school. I'm going to turn it right over to Superintendent Finn, who I believe is going to turn it right over to Jake Langlis, but Superintendent Finn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So first, I want to thank everyone for agreeing to come to this virtual workshop on such short notice. As we know that we're in uncharted territory, and there are emotion comes up around that. With us tonight, we have Principal Langlis. We also have Assistant Principal Dufour. As we always do, we have our senior representative, Fazla Karim. And of course, we've got a bunch of problem solvers that are on this school committee. And I prepared just a very slight presentation just to organize some thoughts. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we'll start from here. So once again, welcome everyone to our workshop. This is a workshop regarding our Lewiston High School class of 2020 graduation. This is what we know right now. What we know now is that graduation exercises nationwide have been altered due to COVID-19. We know the state of Maine has set restrictions on public gatherings that prevent Lewiston High School from planning a traditional graduation ceremony. We know that graduation is a milestone for each of our seniors, and therefore the restrictions and mandated changes are an emotional issue for the class of 2020, not only the class of 2020, but for the greater Lewiston community as well. As a problem-solving body, our school committee has been instrumental in the progressive decisions that have helped to reshape Lewiston Public Schools. And it's with this in mind that the district seeks input from our school committee, who are well in touch with their constituents as to what it is that we can do as a community for these seniors. We've come up with 4 standards of service. And essentially, if you can picture these as a square, any plan needs to fit within these standards. And obviously, we'll just go over them briefly. First is the health and safety of all. Second is logistics and feasibility. Can we actually pull this off? The third is equity and accessibility, because if not every senior can enjoy the graduation ceremony, then it's an injustice for everybody. So we have to keep that in mind as well. And respect for the seniors, the senior class at Lewiston High School. As we plan and we design, any plan that we design must meet these 4 standards of service. There may be some great ideas out there, and I've read and seen a lot, but if these standards cannot be reasonably met, then the idea probably just isn't good for Lewiston Public Schools. So looking at different plans and what different folks have done around the country, you can pretty much put them into 4 different buckets, if you will. They all kind of fall somewhere with variations of each of these 4. The first would be a small group graduation, the idea that I shared with our school committee last week in direction that would be feasible. And with this, the small group graduation allows for a maximum number of actually seniors in a room. Unfortunately, with that small group graduation, it also minimizes the amount of family members that can actually be there. With the size of the graduating senior class at Lewiston High School, in order to pull off a bunch of small group graduations and to do so within the guidelines, if we get into phase 2 eventually here in June, it would still take away from our kids' ability to be in the same room with their families as a small group. Of course, the actual opposite of that is the virtual online graduation that we've seen a lot of colleges and universities, even right here in Maine, go to. There's advantages, but obviously disadvantages to that as well. And then you've got the walk-up graduation. And walk-up could be drive-up, it could be chairlift up, it could be lots of different ways to go up. But essentially, it's a way for our graduates or any graduates to be able to receive their diploma with their family with them up to a certain amount that we could figure out. But again, different variations of that we're seeing pop up around the country. We've studied some very strict guidelines on them, and we've seen some really fun ways to do that too. And we know that our committee members and our seniors have also been studying these things too. Or obviously there's you roll the dice and you wait until gathering numbers permit a traditional graduation. And if we look at how the guidance has been, and we can project out how the state of Maine will eventually reopen, you know, you're eventually up against the clock here in terms of allowing us to do something with our students and with their families. Graduation was scheduled for June 5th. A lot of folks had built their schedules and their plans around that. We've got students leaving to go serve in the military, my niece being one of them from a different school, and they're ready to ship out on a certain day. And we've got folks who have you know, planned to do other things as well. So waiting until August or August 15th is something that maybe looks good on paper, but it obviously doesn't serve the needs for all of our graduates, which is one of the things that we really want to do. We know this. We know that no matter which of these 4 buckets, and so many variations of all of these buckets, by the way, come into play, it's just not going to match up to be a traditional graduation. And I think that we've got to be able to plan accordingly. So obviously, I think that we know how we like to do things in Lewiston Public Schools. We like to gather data, and our primary resource here is our seniors. Our students received an open-ended question via email and through our social media platforms, since email is for old people, according to our seniors. But all that being said, we asked an open-ended question. Really, there's kind of 2 questions in there. The first one is, what is most important to you when considering your graduation day? And the second was, with all of our standards in mind, we explained those standards in our letter, what would you like to see your graduation day look like? Well, our seniors responded, and they're still responding as we speak. At the community forum, which we've scheduled for May 20th, 2020, just 2 nights from now, 6:00 p.m., we're going to have a full panel featuring students, parents, administration, some committee members, and our teacher advisors who'll be on that panel. I'll actually be moderating the conversation, as I'll be monitoring the comments as they come in and trying to categorize them so we can answer some questions, but also start taking some input from our community members who are so inclined to join the meeting. We know that we can have up to 500 gallery members who may provide input and give feedback, with that moderator being available to help direct that virtual conversation. At that point in time, my role will back out after a brief introduction similar to this, and allow the school administration to interact with their kiddos and with their parents as well. The discussion will be informed by student communication data, in addition to school committee input from tonight's workshop. I'd like to be able to share out some pretty amazing things that I've heard from our seniors. I never cease to be impressed by kids. These kids have blown me away with some of the things that they've come up with. And I mean that in a really good way. I will say this without sharing things out prematurely. We have a selfless group of seniors in that class of 2020. And I'll just flat out just say this, they get it. They get it. And I'm very, very proud of them. It's very moving. Information from this forum will help shape the graduation ceremony direction. And you know, what's interesting is that, folks, we're going to be coming up on Memorial Day weekend this weekend, and then after that, it's the last week of May. And you know, with all that being said, we've got to be able to put a plan in place that's really, really informed as well. So this is my final slide. The next steps following that forum, I believe that our committee will probably ask to meet to discuss recommended options for graduation that we'll be able to discuss tonight and hear from our community on Wednesday. Perhaps the committee will vote to support one of the recommended options or come up with another. Our community will then be informed of the committee decision, and details will be communicated to the class of 2020 and their families just as soon as we possibly can get them out there. While we understand that not every community member is going to be pleased with the result of the process, it's really important to know and understand that we value input and feedback from all stakeholders. So then rather than rush something out there, we genuinely do want to hear from folks. And there's a lot of folks who are invested in this community, invested in these kiddos. We see their lawn signs out there that Mr. Langlis personally drove up to every single home to put lawn signs out there. I saw a bunch today, and I honked as I drove by. Crazy superintendent honking at houses, but I'm proud of these kiddos as well. And there are some plans as well to, I think Mr. Dame is coming into our meeting now. There are plans to also award the top 10 and those folks who got some distinguished awards coming their way with Mr. Langless. I actually get to be a part of that, and Mr. Dufour has done a tremendous job of getting that organized as well. With that being said, and that being the basic introduction that I've got, I'd like to hand this over to Principal Langless, who then he has the ball and he can hand it to whomever he wants to. Mr. Langless.
Hi, everyone. So I think Superintendent Finn said it right. I think we're trying to do this the best way that we can. I also think that in a prior meeting, we shared that we would have more discussion about this and that we would be looking at sharing more information on the 11th of May. Superintendent messaged out to seniors and to others about an input cycle, which I think is really valuable. And then I think, I keep thinking about the moment, right? And I think the more I think about it, the moment for parents is seeing their kids and hearing their name get called. And the moment for kids is to walk across the stage, the cap, the gown, and the look and the feel of it. And I think those are really critical moments. But I don't want to assume that I know how everybody else feels. And so getting a cycle of input, I think, is incredibly valuable. I've had all kinds of ideas across my inbox, and they all seem viable in one way, shape, or form. And then I start thinking of the logistics and how to pull it all together. And Jay Dufour is in here because he plans graduation. He's run that show for many years very successfully, and it takes a village to pull this off. But he's the lead for us, and he's been thinking about this a lot as well. When we look at whatever we do, we're projecting somewhere around 275 kids. And as we do whatever work we decide to do, we figure out the logistics of it and we make it happen. We make that moment that can be established happen for kids and for their families, again, within the guidelines. It's hard to ensure that we do something that will make every single person happy, but I think people appreciate the input cycle and the thought around what else might we be able to do to make sure we're just capturing the essence of what it means. I know Superintendent Finn said a nice thing about me going house to house, but that wasn't just me. That was a group effort. Our whole administrative team was involved with that. We were committed to that from when we came up with the idea. And what we learned in that work was invaluable. But what we heard from kids and from their parents, just from dropping off signs and letters, was that they wanted to be a part of this and that they wanted to have some say in that moment, whatever that moment is for them. So I want to honor that. I think that's what makes it special. Certainly it's not my speech that makes it special, but I think it's certainly a milestone, and we want to understand family and student perspectives on that. I don't know if I want to pass the ball back to, or maybe to Jay to see if Jay wants to add anything, or maybe then Fazla to see if he has thoughts from a senior class president perspective.
Sure. Just really brief. I'm committed to doing whatever, the senior class and the community feel is best for graduation to be able to honor our kids, knowing that it's going to be pretty modified because of what we're currently going through. So we will do our very best to honor the kids and make sure that we make that day very special for them, as we're trying to do with a number of, celebrations and bringing those celebrations to each of our kids. I think the size of our school is part of the dilemma to be able to do this and do this well. That's why really need everybody's input to try to make this the best ceremony we possibly can, with all those factors that we have, which are, our size and our, which can make things, some of the other ceremonies that are happening in the state, something that we can't really do at Lewiston.
Can someone, again, just remind us of how many seniors are in the class graduating?
Yeah, so we're projecting, because students are still doing some makeup, but Jay and I have crunched some numbers and looked at, we're projecting about 275. That's an estimate. And we've done a lot of thinking over the last couple months here, but it's little things like if there's so many ifs, and we're committed to making it happen. But if we did something like an individual ceremony and students could bring family up to the size of the guideline, and we give each of the 275 kids roughly a 10-minute something between entrance, making sure we're sanitizing and exit, and a small ceremony, that's 45 or so hours. And so we would be looking at, okay, how do we schedule that, pull that off so we can make sure people can be there when they want to be there, and availability and things of that nature. So we've had some big thoughts, and we're looking at all those possibilities. But kind of like last week, if that's what it takes, because that's what the students and families would like to have for their moment that they will remember, then we will do it.
Fazla, you want to add something to the discussion? Oh, wait a second.
I had like the opportunity to talk to like some of my classmates and my parents as well, and they're like, we believe like the one thing that we have to consider is just safety for just parents, students, and faculty and staff. And I believe that if we follow the biggest like major guidelines, we can really execute this well. I think the day we entered freshman year is we dreamt of this moment, and like we didn't anticipate for it to end like this, but I believe we can make the best out of it. But the one thing in favor was the students didn't want a virtual graduation. They would rather want like an in-person graduation that they can fully experience with their friends and family.
Thank you. So I think, Todd, could you, I'm not sure what you wanted to do next, but I think it might be a good idea for you to bring the slide back up that had the 4 buckets, and then just go through the the committee members to see if they have questions about what that might look like, or what you've heard for feedback. Like Fazlo just said, the virtual, I haven't heard anybody excited about that option. And having had my daughter's college one virtual, I'm not super excited about that option. But I understand the safety factor, and it could be a better than nothing scenario. So I'm just going to go down the list and see what people have for questions and kind of just work it through that way. Unless anybody, Todd, unless you want to do something different or you had more to add first.
No, I think it's a great idea. And no, as we look at the ideas here, there's not been one senior who's emailed back to our special email that we set up for them that said, the virtual is the way to go. In fact, it's more of a combination of the small group or the walk-up that comes in various shapes and sizes as well. One thing that I will say that would really kind of warm my heart, and I didn't see it coming, was that there were most of the seniors who responded were more emphasis. There was more emphasis on family than even on friends. They wanted their families to be close to them. They wanted their families involved. And although they would love to have them both, you'll see on Wednesday that there are some folks that say, if we did a regular graduation, I may not ever even see my friends during the ceremony. I'm sitting alphabetized next to somebody else. It comes, it goes. But one thing that's a constant, my family's going to be there to see it. I know that it's not what I thought of when I started here in June, and I got to meet Fazla and Gemma, and then get into the schools. I pictured us sharing a stage, with the class officers and with the committee, and I had it in my mind what I thought it was going to be too. And I guess we'll just have to kind of wait for that moment to come. But I think we're all in agreement here that we owe these kids the very best that we can give them. And if it means that we've got to work for 3 straight days, then that's what we do. I don't think anyone in Lewiston has ever been afraid to work. And if it means that we can make every one of these kids smile and feel special and know that they were more than just a virtual screen, but they're worth that extra effort, then that's why it takes this entire committee and the entire community to really come to consensus on what we really believe the best we can do for these kids. No matter what it is, it'll never be what they really deserve, but what's the closest we can come to that. So, with every one of our options that we've got, there are pluses and minuses, and there are some exciting variations. And, I think a lot of folks have done a lot of research So these 4 buckets here, they just represent what essentially everyone's plan falls into. When you look at the drive-in is just a variation of walk-up. The kids are still eventually going to walk up with their families, and so there's many ways that we could do things. I'd be really curious to hear from the committee members as to what their thoughts are, and as to maybe what the best thing that our community can do for our kids that are graduating.
All right, I'm going to start with Ms. Parks.
You don't always have to start with me.
I have a list, Megan, and I just follow it. It's a sticky note that stays on my computer.
The question, I had 2 questions that aren't specific to these 4 categories, but are just sort of broad questions. Is it okay to ask those now? If it's a graduation ceremony that's outside, is it still required to be 50 people or less, or are there broader requirements if it's an outdoor setting?
That's a great question, and there are so many contradictories, and it's the nature of this unprecedented times. But there's been no distinction made right now for us with the guidance between outdoor and indoor. And see, here's the thing: is that we've got ourselves a world-class facility right there at Lewiston High School. If we find out, heck, we could find out tomorrow or in a couple of days that because it's outdoors, if we're socially distanced, then maybe we could do some things. I think that just opens up a lot of our options. But right now, what the variables that we have is the guidance that we've been given and the numbers that we have to work with. So long story short on that, Megan, there's been no distinction made between the 2.
And is there able to get, who would give that distinction?
Well, that would come from the CDC, and that would come through through our guidance from the Department of Education. And with the guidance that we were given, there was no distinction made between outdoor and indoor. It was all under one umbrella. So it's after June 1st, perhaps we are looking at no more than 50 people or less than 50 people that can actually be in one place at one time. And there'd be so many ways if it was outdoors that we could possibly get the entire class out there. I mean, we've gone out and walked the entire field and realized that if you work from the 20-yard line all the way back to the back of the end zone, you could probably get these kids spaced out, and maybe we'd have to limit tickets, but we can get people spaced as well. But I think that there might be some fear of folks grouping up, or some of the inevitable things that would take place during a couple of hour ceremony that may have caused folks to pretty much make the blanket statement. But until we receive any other guidance or given permission to do a larger group outdoors, we have to operate within these parameters that I'm not a huge fan of, but we have to do it.
Okay, thank you. My other question is, how has the forum Wednesday night been communicated to all of the senior parents?
All the seniors received a letter from me. It's been put on social media, and the link to the actual forum will be up on our website, and we'll be blasting that out after our meeting this evening. So folks can go ahead and click on the link, and they can join the gallery for that meeting.
Okay, those were the only questions I had for right now. Thank you.
Mr. Damon, hi, how are you?
Sorry, I was a little late getting in. I'm at work. So to me, I don't think the virtual is the way to go. Small group or waiting until we can get, do it traditionally, I think is probably the only 2 options I'd find acceptable.
Thank you. So for me, I would just say that I like either the small group, and I understand the sentiment of those folks that are like moving on and August doesn't make sense for them. I guess I'm holding out for the same reason that Megan asked the question about outdoor space, and that if there's a possibility, because we have such a big, beautiful space to use, maybe we could do something a little more traditional. I know it could be a risk though, to wait. So I polled a couple of my son's friends about what they want to do, and like Fazla said, no one was interested in the virtual. They're so on the small group, and they really just wish they could do something traditional. I get that. It's just, I don't know about waiting, what that will look like. So that's kind of the thoughts that I'm rolling around. I'll be interested to see what the community says on Wednesday night. Mr. Majerus Collins?
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. So first I wanted to ask a question. One of the options, I guess this would fall into the fourth bucket, but it's considerably different than anything that's been mentioned. I know some schools around the country are opting to just totally delay graduation ceremonies for a year and hold them in the spring of 2021 with the next graduating class. Has there been any consideration to doing that in Lewiston?
I'll ask Jake and Fazla to give some feedback on that. What I can say is that from a realistic standpoint, if you've completed your freshman year of college, no matter where you are, you could be deployed in the military. Chances are we wouldn't be able to respect this actual senior class, because who knows what next year's graduation guidelines will look like. I think that maybe our challenge there. Well, I guess Mr. Majerus Collins, that would just be a variation of waiting until gathering numbers permit traditional graduation. That would somehow fall under that 4. I guess I just wonder if it meets that respect for the senior class at LHS. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Again, it's very, very imperfect, but I'm wondering if Mr. Langlis, Mr. Dufour, or Fazla would like to chime in on that.
I'll jump in. It's something that we actually talked about early on, weeks back. And one of the considerations was just, let's say there was interest. If there's good interest, right now we actually have a common issue of turning people away, let's say, who show up too late because the seats are all taken. And that was one of the reasons why we're looking at the outside venue, because it is a little more spacious. The Coliseo holds, I don't know the exact number, but it's around 3,500 or 4,000 with the floor, and we absolutely fill it. So if we were to double up, I would start thinking about the how do we do it. And I know Jay may have some thoughts as well, but we're how people. So if we had to figure it out, we would. And maybe it's multiple ceremonies. I don't know. If we don't have one space that could do it, but I think we'd get creative if that was the will.
Fazla?
Yeah, I can add on. I feel like at this point we're just like in the momentum and anticipating some version of graduation. And by the time we all separate after August, most of us are going to be attending college or in the workforce in the military. And I feel like that momentum, that value of graduation is just going to like depreciate. And just that feeling of having it a year later isn't really going to be the same.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't envy you guys being in this situation. Graduation is such a special moment for everybody, and it's heartbreaking that on top of all of the other losses for our seniors that we're having to talk about, losing this or modifying this in some way. I understand everybody's sort of desire to have this be as close to a traditional graduation as possible. I have to come back to prioritizing health and safety. I think that one of the reasons that so many of us cherish graduations is because it's an opportunity for parents and grandparents and extended family to come and celebrate what a young person has achieved. And that's an important thing to do, but we also want those older folks who are important parts of our students' lives to still be around to celebrate college graduation, to celebrate their weddings and their birth of their children, and absolutely anything that puts the health and safety of our community at risk is just a non-starter. So maybe we can do these in a way that's safe and, doesn't carry risk. Maybe not. The only one of the 4 that feels, well, I suppose waiting until it was safe would also be safe. But the only other one that seems like it's guaranteed not to spread the disease is a virtual graduation. But I'm willing to listen to the district's ideas for how to do a small group graduation or a walk-up graduation safely.
So,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to get through because it's 8:35.
You're right. You're right.
Miss Whitlow?
Yeah, so it's my understanding that the CDC is going to set out some guidelines this Wednesday. So that might help making that decision when you guys have that other meeting. Because I know that for baseball, we're waiting. We know that the 20th is when they're supposed to set out the guidelines. We know that that's always up in the air if they'll actually set those guidelines. But so I'm hoping we'll have a better understanding then. But anything outside would be great. If the state says that we can have X amount of people for X amount of square footage outside, that type of thing, I don't see why we wouldn't do something like that versus waiting or an online. If the state says okay, then why wouldn't we move forward with a graduation in person of some sort? That's it.
Thank you for sharing that about new guidelines coming out. And I think I forgot, you would have your ear to that because of your work with baseball. So I'll be anxious to hear that. That's true. It will probably help us. Ms. Hawkins.
So I'm just looking at these and listening to the conversation. And I remember being the first one in my immediate family to graduate from high school. It was very important for my family. And being creative the way I am, I'm thinking, if we do have the option to do it outside, if the weather holds, do like a combination between small group and walk-up graduation, have like 5 families come, have them sit at a specific distance, have the child walk up, graduation, diploma, call their name, the whole spiel, and then go back to the family and the next child come up or something. Virtual graduation, it's not the same thing. And our seniors have said pretty clearly so far, that's not what they want. So that's pretty clear. I remember I graduated from college just 5 years ago. And that was almost a year after my last class. And I felt kind of blindsided because I was like, what, a year later? We need to figure something out. We need to remember to think outside the box. But I think we can make this happen. We just have to be creative enough to do it.
Thank you. Mr. Potman.
Hey, for the input that I got, pretty much it's vague in 3 areas. And one, they definitely want something live that's as close to normal as we can get it. 2, they didn't prefer outdoors. They definitely did not. Nobody seemed to like the idea of doing anything indoors. They wanted that added safety, and definitely not the virtual. Nobody felt comfortable with it. So that's all the input I got.
Thank you. Mr. Donovan.
I agree with pretty much what everyone else is saying. I don't think the virtual graduation is really going to do it for anybody. I certainly wouldn't want it for myself. And I do want to explore the options of just doing this safely doing the walk up, or the 2 options that we've been talking about. I think that those 2 are those 2 are going to get the job done. I think that's my opinion. I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Ray.
Thank you, Ms. Roy. Could we jump back to the slide, I think before this one, Superintendent Finn? This one. So these 4 standards of service are kind of what's most important to me. I know there are 4 options outlined on the next slide, but as I consider health and safety and accessibility, traditional graduation, we don't know when we could possibly do this. And as I'm sure Mr. Dufour could probably tell us, it takes a long time to plan a successful graduation exercise. And so I just think that's out of our purview. In terms of either small group and or walk up, there might be a fact where some people choose not to attend. Of our group of school committee members, Mr. Damon would graduate first and Miss Whitlow last based on alphabetical last names. And so if Miss Whitlow were afraid of contracting disease herself or just had any hesitation, she may choose not to go because she's close to the end of the alphabet. And I think that removes, it's a logistics question then. So I am on the virtual commencement team for Bates College currently. And it's not anything anyone wants. I get that. However, it is the safest option. We're in a slightly different situation where students were sent back to their hometowns or other residences, and it would be very difficult to bring them back for a May conferral of degrees. But for this group, I think it makes the most sense as well. I hope I don't get censored, but this all sucks. There's no good option. However, in order for students to have that closure on their senior year, to accept their degrees and move on to what's next for them, I think virtual is the safest option and most accessible. I know that's unpopular, but that's where I'm at.
Thanks, Ms. Ray. So I think we're going to hear more from the community on Wednesday night, which will help guide us, and we'll be able to probably have a deeper conversation in a meeting to follow that, which will probably be next Monday. I think we should talk to Mr. Dufour right now while we have just a few minutes left about other activities like the top 10 and how those are being organized, and perhaps how we could be participants in those that we usually are. See, I didn't forget, Jay.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so where we can't get everything in, we're trying very hard to honor our students. We normally do a lot of recognitions at the end of the year. So next Wednesday on the 27th, we're going to, which was originally the scheduled date for the top 10 luncheon, which we traditionally do at the Green Ladle. In a similar format to how we delivered the lawn signs, we're going to visit each member of the top 10, starting at 11 till approximately 2 o'clock, and celebrate them. So I know I've invited some folks to be a part of it specifically, but I wanted to wait until this meeting and invite all of you, but also to sort of respect some of the social distancing. Some folks will be presenting some mementos to the graduates, to the top 10, and they'll be sort of like, I don't know if you've seen some of those drive-by birthday celebrations. We'll be doing something similar if folks would willing to be a part of that.
So I think part of what you and I discussed a little bit is that if committee members wanted to be a part of the parade, they would stay in their vehicle and be part of that procession, and kind of honk the horn and wave and show your congratulations. So it's okay for them to just reach out to you, Mr. Dufour, if they are interested in doing that?
Yes, and I will actually prompt everyone by sending you an invite and with some logistics. And if you could come in and join us for either some or all of it, because we're visiting 10 houses over the course of probably 3 hours, I know the students would greatly appreciate it.
I took the day off, so it can help. Because you said we're gathering at 10, is that?
Yeah, around 10:30, and we plan to visit the first home at 11 o'clock.
Great. Are there any other activities that we should know about while we're here?
Yeah, so the other one, two others that are quick. I know traditionally we've done the Night of Excellence for our juniors and seniors, Night of Scholarships. We're currently planning on trying to do something with that virtually. That's still on the planning phase. Our National Honor Society induction, we're going to do that on the 28th, next Thursday. That'll be completely virtual. Our advisor, Miss Kelly Gilzo, is working on that right now. So the students are looking forward to it. I don't think, again, it's not going to be their favorite, but I think it's the most sound idea for that group to get them inducted into NHS. And I'll get some info out on that as well to everyone.
Okay. Thank you for continuing to plan those events. I think they're super important for the students who have worked hard. You know, there's some of them who've had siblings who achieved the same thing and had those, they could have aspired to that themselves, and now it'll look a little different. But I think there's been so many people talking about those drive-by parades that they're just so happy about it that I feel like that is a great way to try to celebrate those achievements. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask if anybody has any other things. Linnea? And Linnea does, so go ahead.
Just a quick comment about the driving by and waving. We may want to, and honking and whatnot, we may want to put a notice out to the community that that's going to be happening, because there have already been some cases of like drive-by birthday parties where people have called the cops on the people driving through and honking.
Ooh.
So we may want to just advise the community, hey, we're celebrating our seniors, please be a decent human being.
Or just so they understand what it is and they're not freaked out about it. And I don't know if we should let the PD actually know as part of the process. Yeah, good point. So I'm just going to take a look around the screen. Wave your hand if you want to add anything else to the conversation about the options or questions that you might have about anything. Miss Ray.
So one question was just on the process of awarding degrees to students. Is there, so like, what is the background process? I'm getting a little conflated with the Bates process where the trustees vote on it and then there's like the announcement of conferral of degrees. What does that timeline look like for the public school?
Jake, I think that's a you question.
Are you referring to when students get their physical degree, the diploma?
I suppose I'm more thinking of the date it's awarded. As I think about applying for college and grad school, they definitely ask when you earned your high school diploma.
So we audit all the students' transcripts and we certify them as graduating. And then in the past, what we've done is the students go through graduation and we hand them their diploma, the sheet that goes in it the next morning, but is dated the date of graduation. I would anticipate that this year, and we can check on it, but I would anticipate that this year we would still leave it as June 5th, regardless of when the actual graduation is, because that was the intended date, and all the students' grades will be done by then.
Okay, great.
So we can leave those. And also, just as food for thought, as things extend into the summer, because we do have students who complete in the summer, their graduation is still for the year of 2020.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I see you, Mr. Finn. I just want to see Mr. Potvin. Go ahead.
Just a quick question to the superintendent. What is the format for Wednesday's event? How are we supposed to be participating? Is this another Zoom event? Is this something totally different? What's the expectation? What the committee is going to be doing? Can you just expand on that a bit?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Great question. So it'll be a Zoom webinar, which will be similar to what we did with our city council the second time that we met. So there'll be a panel. I've asked Mr. Langwis to put a panel together. I do believe that he's asked a board member to serve on that panel as well. And everybody else will be able to see it, be able to comment in or shoot in some ideas. We'll have all of our devices up so we can monitor and categorize those. And And then I'll be able to address many of the questions or some of the input that's put in there as well. So as far as expectation from our committee members, love to have the committee members participate as part of the gallery. If Mr. Langwis has asked for someone to serve on the panel of a dozen people or so, I think that our emphasis really was that we wanted parents and kids on there. That's one great way to make sure we get their input. But that would be really the format. So it will look similar to this, but you'll see about 12 folks on there that you'll be able to watch and comment into. And from there, we'll take that. I learned a lot today just by listening to folks as well, and we're going to narrow it down. And I think the chair Roy had mentioned, I know next Monday's Memorial Day, but I don't know if
Oh, no, that's right. No, that's why I was like, I don't know yet. I don't know the date yet, but you'll be watching your email because it's not going to be long before we have to make the decision.
That's
We're
right.
not going to wait till our next regular meeting.
That's right. And so we want to be able to give Jake and Jay and their team and the kids a heads up so they can get excited about what we're going to do for them. But I think it was just, this was so important. First of all, our committee has helped us lower our tax rate for next year. With the teamwork that we've seen, we're able to do some really cool programming with less. And this is just one more challenge that together we're going to be able to solve. Really believe in that collaboration, and I think Wednesday is going to allow the community to see that too.
Miss Whitlow, you had something?
Yeah,
We have
so-
9 minutes.
Yep, I just quickly. So are we supposed to be clicking on a link to be a part of this, or do we not need to be involved with this? And also, is graduation a policy thing? Is something that we have to approve, or is that something that the administrators take care of?
So for this, great question, Ms. Whitlow. For this event, we're going to have a link that, of course, our board members will have emailed out to them. There'll also be a live link right there on our website too, with probably a cap and gown where folks can click into that conversation, and we'll have that communicated out. Wanted to make sure it was okay with our committee tonight that we do that. It sounds like people are behind us on the Wednesday community meeting. There's been no discussion as to otherwise on that. So we'll go ahead and push that out there tonight, tomorrow morning, so folks will know to be ready for that as well. And as far as participation similar to what Ron was talking about, not necessarily. Obviously, there'll be some really interesting conversation that if you want to click on and listen to or be a part of the of that conversation. I'm looking forward to hearing some ideas and watching folks kind of pull together on that. So that's basically the format. It's just essentially if we were, and by the way, there's no policy as to how graduations run, but this is, Jake and I talked earlier today. This is a very sensitive time in our community. We'd love for our community to get behind the problem solving process and say this is Lewiston Public Schools plan that we're going to go with based on all the input that we got. So this year,
Mr. Majerus Collins, go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt Mr. Finn.
No, you're fine, sir.
Oh, I thought he was done. I'm sorry. Sorry, Mr. Finn.
You're fine. You're fine.
So I just wanted to double check. And I think this may be a restating of Ms. Whitlow's second question. Ultimately, the manner in which we conduct graduation is going to be a decision that comes from the school committee.
No, it's school administration that it comes from. We want to be able to provide the guidance, and that guidance. I think that we've got such a I'm going to keep saying problem-solving body that we've got here, and we're making some progress with that. This is just another opportunity for folks here because you're so plugged in with the folks that are within your ward, if you will, and there may have, and I know that there's been some communication members have shared with me that have kind of led us down this path of let's hear from more people. So I think when all said and done, we're not looking to pass a policy for graduation or anything like that, but I think it would be really important to say that the committee is behind this and we get our fact finding on it. But at the end of the day, it really isn't even the superintendent's call. It comes down to Jake's team and his committee, and they're wide open for suggestion and guidance.
It's a high school administration decision, I believe.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Mm-hmm.
And our team is ready to do that work. So
So are there any other things committee members want to say? Because I'd like to take a 5-minute recess and then we'll go into our regular business meeting. Okay, and I hope that Mr. Finn was clear, like, unless you're on the panel, you don't have to be sitting here like this and answering questions and things like that. But we encourage you to come and participate as part of the community and have your voices heard that way if you'd like to. All right. I'm going to mute and black out my screen. We'll be back in 5.
We're going to be still live, so I recommend people do that. Yes.
Mute and black your screen out.
Yep. Just mute it and turn your video out. Yep.
Monique, I put, oops.
Yeah.
You can hear me, yes?
Yes, I can.
So I put Jay Dufour back in the waiting room. He's just gonna, he said, just bring him back in when we get to that LHS expansion topic. And I'll bring the architects in from the waiting room at the same time.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Waiting on a couple of people to come back.
And you're live right now. So when you're ready, go ahead and start.
All right. Need Mr. Potvin and Miss Parks to show their video so we can get going.
So it's telling me I can't use my video because the host is not letting me.
I'm not stopping you. Wait. Let's see. I'm going to click a button. It's going to ask you to start your video. Do you see it?
Yeah, there it is.
All along. It was me all along. Welcome, everybody, to the formal board meeting of the Lewiston School Committee. It is May 18th, 2020, 6:02 p.m. And we will start this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I will pull up the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, agenda item. That was agenda item number 1. Agenda item number 2, COVID-19 update, Superintendent Finn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got quite a comprehensive list. A lot's happened in the last 2 weeks. First, I want to thank my team, Karen and Bobby, for helping me compile all this information that I'm going to share with the committee this evening. So please bear with me, but there's a lot of very important information to share. From our business office, our employee payrolls has stayed on schedule. All of our vendor payments have continued to be made timely. We are really working on relationships and more collaboration in between our departments, despite the fact that we've not been able to see each other. Staff has really learned to utilize technology in a whole new way. And the preliminary audit has gone very well. Again, that was done virtually. And in the middle of phase 1 through 4 planning in the business office. I want to pause for a second because something came to my mind the other day as I was talking about what we've been doing as a district with a different district. And we went into this this situation, this unprecedented situation, wondering how bad is this going to be. And as each week and each month passed, we realized, oh my gosh, it just seems like it continues to get more and more challenging. But recently, despite obstacles here and there, that question has shifted from how bad is this going to be to how good are we going to be when this is over? How much better have we actually gotten? And I'm telling you right now, based on what I'm reading to you tonight, it's evident that we've actually gotten better as a district as a result of this. We know that from an HR standpoint, I'm going to get into a very important topic here in a second. I'll shift over to open enrollment webinars. This is different as we're entering our open enrollment, offering 3 webinars for employees this year. In the past, they've gone to individual buildings to meet with employees. Last year, the turnout was approximately just 35 people overall. But with these webinars that we've got scheduled, it's more likely that we'll have a lot more than that participating this year. And it could be something that in years in the future that we actually look to go to in order to increase that participation. This is really cool too. Our HR office and our folks in operations have helped to complete the first draft of ready for this, a Lewiston Public Schools employee handbook. It's really important that we have those handbooks, and so that folks can quickly look to something that contains important information about policies and procedures for our school department. In addition, the handbook includes critical information about the duties and responsibilities of employers, as well as the benefits that are available to our employees, all in one book. This is something that during our retreat, it's just a draft, but we're going to want to give a copy to our committee members to take a peek at. But it's always very important for all employees to be able to have something that they can look at, that they can hold in their hands or pull up on the website for a lot of that information. And something that, that Monique Gilbert and her team have really worked hard on, that now can get passed over to this committee as well. And of course, they're in the middle of their phase 1 through 4 planning as well. From a food service standpoint, 230,000 meals have been served, and that continues to grow by 60,000 every single day. Amazing work being done there, and it's not done, by robots. These are human beings. These are moms and grandmas and dads and folks who come and work hard for our kids every single day, but also volunteers. Many members of our association or our LEA have stepped up to go out there and put themselves at a degree of risk too, to make sure that our kids are being fed. And so these things don't run themselves. We got some incredible human beings here in Lewiston Public Schools, and they're continuing to do great things. USDA waivers have been granted for the following food service. The waivers are for non-congregate feedings, parent pickup, and for meal times. Summer planning for feeding is underway as well. From a facility standpoint, they are coordinating the receiving and storage of 1,800 tablets provided by the state, working full speed on school improvement district-wide that had been identified in previous weeks and prioritized planning for schools visited this week, planning for refinishing floors district-wide, planning for when teachers and students come to gather remaining items and buildings, as well as returning technology devices to schools at the end of the year. That's going to be an undertaking like no other, but we've got a great team planning for that right now. Working with vendors to monitor status of PPE orders and finalizing their phase 1 through 4 plans as well. Technology, one of the busiest departments that we have. We've done a phenomenal job as well. The technology department prepared over 2,400 devices that are currently deployed out to students. They've purchased laptops to allow central service staff to work remotely, provided the software tools to support so that central service staff and building staff were set up to work from home. They learned how to use and support staff and students using remote support software. They created a help desk, rescheduled options to assist families without internet connectivity, worked with the Maine DOE to require 236 new Chromebooks for elementary schools, currently working with the Maine DOE to require that over 1,800 plus Samsung tablets, Tab A with hotspot functionality, and this will provide internet connectivity for over 1,800 students that don't have it right now. Technology integrators have created and made available countless how-to sheets and tech tips to support teachers working from home. We know that our tech integrators are providing one-on-one support in small group sessions to assist teachers needing technology training. The tech department is busy planning how to support summer school options because chances are it'll be very tech heavy. Summer projects include overhauling the LMS Wi-Fi network, district fiber project, and planning for LHS expansion project that we'll hear more about this evening. Working on potentially including grades 3 and 4 into our existing one-to-one laptop program and beginning discussions on what one-to-one computing might look like actually for grades K through 2 as well. Truly, we could actually be a one-to-one district before the end of the summer. Creating and beginning the documentation of the new technology department standardized operating procedures that are needed when staff have to work from home. This could even occur during snow days in the future. Researched and implemented Zoom and YouTube as we're working on right now. Onboarded a new network administrator during the COVID-19 pandemic. Created a deployment plan, technology department COVID-19 planning document, updated the department's 5-year capital improvement plan and a document to track COVID-19 expenses. And finally, they completed a SWOT analysis of the department's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats during the COVID-19 pandemic. From a transportation standpoint, our transportation routes, Don has worked very hard to route all the seniors in the top 10. It's not as easy as just going from house to house. There's actually routes have to be followed on that. She worked real hard, even staying up till 2 a.m. to make those routes happen very quickly. And regarding our teaching and learning, we know that we are in week 3 of phase 3. Teacher created learning plans are available for all students pre-K through 6. We know courseware, MyPath and PathBlazer are available for students, all student kids grades K through 12. We know high school course offerings may very well be expanded through the school year and into the summer for all grades and for credit as well. We know summer learning opportunities are now being explored and examined with some of the similar guidance that we've been talking about regarding our graduation. It's looking a lot more and more like there may be more of a virtual summer school option, but with guidance and regulations in mind, those conversations are literally happening on a daily basis to make sure we can provide learning opportunities for students during the pandemic over the course of the summer. Obviously, our summer feeding program will continue. We just spoke about a community forum that's set for Wednesday at 6 p.m. And there'll be a link for that on the website for all to be able to join. We will have a retreat. We have a retreat for the Green Ladle, the school committee, very exciting, on the 13th of June. I believe it's 7:30 a.m. 8:30?
7:30 a.m. I thought it was 8:30.
Oh, I guess I have to be there at 7:30.
Yeah.
Someone's gonna bring the pastries. I'd like to point out something that since our previous meeting, we've been in close contact with city officials regarding our role in supporting the emergency shelter that was set up and run through the Armory. I think as everyone here knows, our school department has worked incredibly close, and we should be very, very proud of how close we have worked with the city. That being said, things at first were happening at breakneck speed, and we've just gotten used to that because it's still coming down so quickly. As we were made aware at the end of April that our middle school was going to be used for the shower facility that would be utilized by the shelter organizers, we identified a bit of a communication snafu in there that I'll talk about here momentarily. But having inquired, we do know that folks are being brought over in small groups, and they're supervised after they shower and they come on back to the Armory. We do know that the showers are cleaned professionally from an outside agency, and they're sanitized daily. We know that the shelter is slated to remain open until June 1st. However, with the extension of the emergency order, that very well could be June 11th, and we can certainly check on that as well.
June 30th, Todd.
June 30th, thank you. We do know that it's very well organized, and I'm pretty impressed with what the operation looks like, having learned more about that. We do know that there was reported to be one positive COVID-19 test with one of the residents that has since left the shelter. That resident never used any of the shower facilities. It's important that folks know that too. We are strong partners with the city, and we've asked that any use of school buildings in the future be requested directly through my office. There was a request made, it wasn't through my office, however, and I do believe that at the pace that requests were being made, and as much as accommodating as folks wanted to be, we've communicated that it would be acceptable for requests to be made through my office, because my job is to inform the school committee. We also know that the school committee has a sole authority over all the buildings and grounds in our district. And because of a communication issue, the school committee actually did not have the chance to weigh in on whether or not this is something that that they would support. I can tell you from a superintendent standpoint that I'm satisfied that steps have been taken between the school department and the city officials to help rectify any further issues in this matter. Again, in unprecedented times, it wasn't as if there was necessarily a playbook. Having having been really involved and taking a peek at where that communication breakdown happened, we identified that and addressed it. And we're prepared to continue supporting as long as our school committee intends for us to continue supporting this effort. There's our COVID-19 update. I'm sure there's probably some questions or some input regarding that last piece. And I know I didn't necessarily have that on the agenda, but this does fall under the COVID-19 update. So I'll hand it back over to you, Chair Roy.
Thank you. That was a lot of information. And I think that, you know, if there were an extension of the use of the middle school showers past the June 30th date, that we would have the opportunity as a committee to discuss that and allow for any sort of, like we regularly do for school committee agenda items. We would discuss that just so people have an understanding. I think just the communication issue, it just happened. And I think that going forward, like you said, there was a lot learned and the process will be different for any other asks like that. But I will, if anybody has questions about all of that information, if we could just do a quick, you know, round up and see if anybody does have anything that they wanted to specifically address from the update, just questions that you may have had. Ms. Ray?
Thank you very much. It's pretty related, but something maybe to just look into and maybe report back on later is, so we have elections of coaches for the fall season tonight, which I'm definitely comfortable with moving ahead on. I think if we don't know if there's going to be a season or not, being able to prepare ourselves and maybe our employees for if those stipends will be in place or not. I know that was part of the discussion about the spring, and that was more dependent on timelines, but with the lead up as part of our COVID-19 considerations, I'd like for us to think about that and have a plan presented if possible.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Oh, Mr. Finn is muted.
Could I address that?
Yes.
But it's a phenomenal point. Fortunately, this is something we've been talking about, deeply with our building leaders as well. I'd like to ask Ms. Avery to be able to assist in this conversation. Have you worked really, really hard regarding fall coaches and what that scenario may look like?
Yeah, so we've got a plan for that in place. And so we're going to put the coaches before you for approval. Their pay agreements are the language in their pay agreement, we're going to add that it's contingent upon the sport or activity actually occurring. So we're just going to modify the language in their pay agreement to include that.
That's exceptional to hear that that's already been done. Thank you so much for thinking forward. I just know it was a scramble for spring.
Yep, no, we got it covered.
Thank you so much.
Other questions? Mr. Majoris-Collins, then Mr. Potvin.
Yeah, on that same topic. So when we're talking about our fall coaches, presumably we're talking mostly about people who have been coaching for a number of years in the particular sport. Are we giving them contracts that say it's contingent upon the sport occurring, or just new hires?
Okay, so actually we hire year to year. They don't get, a coach doesn't get an extenuating or an extension of a contract. So it's going to be all coaches across the board will receive the same language. It'll be contingent upon whether or not and remember, it's not just coaches, it could be advisors for co-curricular. So it's any athletic coaching position or co-curricular position. Would be all.
Mr. Potvin.
Madam Chair, Mr. Superintendent, I was just wondering if at this stage of the game, if it wouldn't be prudent for us to form a new subcommittee on COVID operations, focusing on what a new school year starting next September would look like. Is it necessary? We may need to be brainstorming this to come up with several options to see how things go forward. I just want to know where we are with the planning in terms of taking a look at September.
So I think that's a good point. And I think at our retreat, we could talk about, and like we had done in our original one, what the subcommittee might look like. And if it's an ad hoc committee, like timeline that it would be in place and who would want to be on that. That's an excellent idea. So I think we could do that at the retreat.
Okay.
Thank you. Others? Mr. Majerus Collins?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to ask if it if we could have a discussion at potentially at a later meeting about the contract language with the coaches, because I thought that this school committee did a remarkable job in supporting our coaches in the spring season, and I would not want to see us retreat from that position in the fall.
And I think that might be part of the subcommittee work actually in preparations, but I think it would be are you talking about maybe having a vote on having coaches be paid like we did in the spring, even though that there's not going to be a season?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I guess I would say I really hope there's a fall sports season, but obviously none of us can say for sure. But yeah, I do think that we should continue that policy, and so I think it would be worth having the school committee take that up and see what the consensus is and what the vote would be.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just looking ahead to make sure. For Mr. Damon, go ahead.
What would be the last date that you could decide about, like with football starts like 1st of August, and so I suppose some, soccer and those as well. So I mean, what would be the cutoff date? Would it be, is it too late after the retreat?
Well, those are all phenomenal questions. And I met with the Western Maine Superintendent Association today. We're all in the same boat. We're all waiting for information that's been promised to us that often doesn't come when we're told that it's going to come, and for there to be guidance that's sent down from the DOE. Now, we know that this is ever changing. We know that we just got the guidance based on graduation, and we learned a little bit more about guidance about summer school too. What we've got is we've got our commissioner who's got a panel of folks up there made up of medical professionals that are really giving a lot of input and a lot of guidance as to what things may look like. And fall sports is no different. Absolutely, Mr. Dan, I remember when I coached football, we were out there just after the 4th of July. And by the time we got to games in August and September, the hard work's already been done. It's really difficult for us to be able to even speculate as to what that may look like. I've heard so many different scenarios that are tossed around out there as I meet with our athletic director. But I guess that in time we'll find out based on what the guidance and what those regulations are going to be. And the same thing when it comes to possible reopening scenarios. I think we'll find that there are several variations off of really 4 ways to think about it. And we're going to need the school committee's guidance and support and direction really as to how we'd like to go. And one of the problems with that too, and with fall sports and everything else, is that we just don't have all the information yet. And I think a lot of that will have to do with testing and numbers and trends and when it's actually safe to be able to have a practice for contact sports like football and soccer and what's that going to look like. So just so much more to learn. And I think just as we always do in Lewiston, we will adapt and we'll overcome. And if it comes down to playing a 5-game season and because our kids need to practice, then who knows what that will look like. But there's just so much information in so short a span of time right now between now and let's say July 1st, and so many more facts that we're going to learn and more guidance that we'll have to continue to just be nimble and be willing to meet as we do and come up with with strong decisions together.
Anything else before we go to the regular agenda items? The rest of them? Ms. Hawkins.
really quick. I really appreciate how comprehensive and on top of things this whole committee and the school department has been during this. The people I have talked to, when they're curious about how things are going, I can tell them some of what we've done so far, and the look of ease that they get when they know that our school department is thinking about these things and making plans and doing the work we're doing really makes it a lot easier to tell these families it's going to be okay. We're going to find a way through this. So I just want to thank everybody for all the work that we're all doing during all this, because it'd be a lot easier just to pretend it's not happening and just continue with meetings as usual and whatnot. But we aren't people that hide our heads in the sand. We're in here solving the problems and finding ways to do things. And it really is an honor to be able to be part of this. So thank you all.
Thank you. Okay. Agenda item number 3. Are there items that the members want to remove from the consent agenda? Dang it. All right. This is the worst part for me. Mr. Potvin.
Is I'd like to remove the accounts payable piece.
The accounts payable piece. Can you talk a little bit more?
I wanted to go over with Miss Avery what the financials have been looking like since the start of this COVID situation. Are we where we normally spend money? As their money's not being spent? Are we, how are we addressing it? Are we foreseeing something coming down the road? How that's been going?
Okay, I'm trying to find that on. I apologize. Going from this screen so I can see you all to my agenda is challenging for me to do. So can you, I'm just trying to clarify where on the agenda or how are you wanting to take something off?
To bring it out for discussion. I think the financial piece going forward is pretty important.
Mr. Majerus Collins, can you help me? You look like you want to help me.
I don't want to. It seems like maybe Mr. Potvin was asking that we remove the transaction section of the consent agenda for further discussion and do personnel and minutes as without discussion.
Separate?
Yes.
Okay. Then we would have that as a separate item to discuss. And do I need a motion for that? No.
No.
Okay. So removing the April 2020 transactions and making it a regular agenda item. I do need a vote on that, yes. Because you're basically adding one. No?
Okay, I'll make the motion. I mean, I thought we could, when it came to approving the minutes, that if there was something that needed discussion, it could be independently taking off.
I have it on here that it says set aside, then there's a motion to, sorry. Set aside items. No second is needed. You put it on there. Okay. Other than the set aside items. Okay. And I think that's fine. I don't think we have to all vote yes for that. What we do need to vote on is the rest of the agenda as presented. Sorry, thank you. Unless there are other items that need to be removed.
I had a quick question.
Yes.
Because of the hiring of coaches for the fall, how does that play in with the contracts being, I mean, have they been given contracts yet? Or will they be getting contracts that say, you know, that clause in it?
Mr. Finn?
Yes, I actually just checked and received word from MPA. They just issued guidance that said July 6th would actually begin workouts. No contact, no scrimmages. However, beginning July 6th, fall coaches can begin working out their players. So they will be working, at least as of right now.
So, Ms. Whitlow, are you wanting to clarify on Mr. Majerus Collins' point earlier that if we're voting in favor of the personnel agenda, then does that mean we're voting in favor of the new contract language and paying coaches?
Yeah, I'm just, it seems contradictory. I don't know what we're doing there.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Majerus Collins?
So, I mean, it would seem as though the contracts that the coaches have been offered at this point have the stipulation about not paying them. And obviously we're talking about not just coaches, but all sorts of stipends. But that we wouldn't be paying them if there's not a season. That's what the language currently says. And we can vote for the hiring with that language and then later on return to the question of, do we actually want to yank that language? I can't imagine any coach then saying, well, hold on a second, you said you weren't going to pay me and I don't want to get paid. So, you know, I mean, we can obviously, we can come back to this after, you know, even at the next regular meeting, but we can come back to it after we hire these folks, because we can just change the policy and say, actually, we're going to fully pay everybody and nobody's going to possibly quarrel with that on the coach's side.
Gotcha. Does that satisfy your question, Ms. Whitlow?
Not, because I just wanted to be, what my question was is, have we already offered the contracts that have the stipulation in it? That's my
Okay.
question.
Bobby?
The contracts do not get offered until after the school committee takes a vote. So if you vote on this tonight, then we would offer the contracts with that language. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
In that event, Madam Chair, would it be possible then for the school committee to take personnel out of the consent agenda and just have a straight up question of whether we want to have that language or not as an item in tonight's meeting?
We could, but I don't think that anybody disputes that language. I think we would talk about what happens if the MPA comes out and says there's no season and what we would do in that case. Right now, the language just says if there's no season, we don't pay you. We can, I mean, that's fine. We don't know the answer. So I wouldn't want to vote on something not knowing where we stood on the season at all. I wouldn't want to change that.
So to my understanding, the contracts would say that we wouldn't pay the coaches if there wasn't a season. And what I'm suggesting is we not include that language, because I think we should pay them regardless of whether there's a season. But other committee members may have a different perspective on that. And so that's, I guess, what I'm asking for the committee to take up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So then we would have to pull one piece of the personnel, that piece in particular, and make it its own item that we will be discussing. Okay, we will do that. Our agenda is getting longer and longer. Okay, so are there any other things that we want to take off the consent agenda at this time? Okay, having those two things separated out, I will entertain a motion for adopting the consent agenda with those two items removed.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Potvin. Let's do our roll call. Ms. Parks?
Yes.
Mr. Damon?
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Majerus Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Whitlow? She said yes. I don't know why I didn't hear it, but Ms. Hawkins? Yes. Mr. Potvin?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Ms. Ray?
Yes.
Okay. You have those items written down, Todd?
I do.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Look at my PDF. Agenda item number 4, public input. Members of the public may address the school committee for up to 3 minutes on non-agenda items now and on agenda items later. Comments that pertain to staff, personal matters, or a student issue should be directed to the superintendent or the appropriate staff member of Lewiston Public Schools. Public comments should be directed to the school committee and be brief, wow, not repetitive, and related to the matter at hand. Mr. Finn, do we have any public comment?
No, ma'am, we do not have any public comment that was sent to our email address set up for our committee meetings.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. Ray.
So during the whole debate that just happened, I was waiting for maybe someone to ask for clarification of the rules, but that does not seem to have happened. So the transactions and personnel should probably be taken up. Well, public input at any point because it's such an odd time, but should be taken up next. When we took out the transactions, did we just take, which documents were taken out? Was it just transactions?
It would have just been the coaches approving the coach positions.
So the personnel agenda only?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
My understanding was that Mr. Potvin had also asked for the transactions to be taken out separately. Yeah.
Those 2 items. I thought she was just asking for the personnel, what we were going to discuss. But yes, the first thing on the consent agenda, which is the April transactions, and then the personnel to discuss the coaches. Does that, Ms. Ray, answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Agenda item number 5, to receive a presentation from the Lewiston High School, Lewiston Expansion Committee. And that, I believe, folks are coming in from the waiting room, and Mr. Jay Dufour will be presenting along with the committee and the architects.
Hi, everyone.
And Mr. Langlis again.
So we have a group of folks joining us. I know that Mr. Damon's been pretty actively involved, and many school committee members have leading up to today. But we have Assistant Principal Jay Dufour, who has been chairing this project for us, and also Lance Whitehead and Jay Doherty through our architecture firm, who have been great collaborators with us. And there's a plan for presentation, so I will pass it off to Jay.
Hello again, everyone. Thanks for having us tonight. Thanks, Mr. Finn, for allowing Lance and Jay from LaValle Brenzinger Architects, who have been with us since the beginning of this project. So I came on to this project in January of last year when Superintendent Webster was getting ready to retire. I took his place as an admin liaison. Our committee has been longstanding, and there are several folks on that committee who have been looking for this expansion of the arts wing at the school for many, many, many years, 20 or more. And Bruce can probably attest to that. So when I came on, it was about getting this approved by the city council so it could go to ballot, to referendum. And we ran a pretty substantial marketing campaign and they had a successful vote last November. And we've been planning the expansion ever since, making it not only an arts wing, but also trying to meet the needs of our school in a number of different areas. So I'd like to turn it over to Lance, who's going to kind of take us a little bit more through the history. And I know that Jay Doherty has some great pictures to share with everyone. So Lance, why don't you go ahead and take it from here.
All right, I'm going to ask Jay Doherty to share the screen to kind of guide us through this. Can everyone see the screen? Great. Excellent. So, Jay, you want to pop us over to the agenda? Yep. There we go. So we kind of wanted to go through just a few things tonight. Quick project history. I know many of you have been involved, like Bruce from the beginning. schedule update on where we're at, budget update. We recently did updated numbers on everything we've been working on, and then really want to delve into the design to show you guys where we're at and what the decisions that have been made so far are, and get some feedback. So a little bit about the project history. We've been working for 2.5 years. We were selected in November 2017. We had a committee formed at that time. That committee has been with us ever since, growing in numbers. I would say 20 to 25 strong at some of the meetings, well participated. We did start with user meetings. We interviewed a lot of teachers and a lot of students about the spaces at the high school and some of the issues they saw. We did 3 public forums to get community feedback based on what we heard, and solidify the mission that we're trying to accomplish. We had several committee meetings throughout the years, and ultimately that led to the referendum approval that was in November 19. To date, from there, we went into schematic design and design development. We're about 3/4 of the way through that, and we're ready to move into what we would call construction documents, or blueprints, bid documents, that are getting ready to be bid. And that's going to take us right into construction this summer. Now, early in the process, we came out with a few things that were common things that we said need to be addressed with part of this project. For those of you who are familiar with the high school, and I know most of you are, there is completely inadequate space for music and art at the high school now. That was some of the premise of what this committee was founded upon, the areas they affectionately call the dungeon. We also found there's actually inadequate space for classrooms, period. And the committee said we must address this if we're addressing music and art at the same time. And that kind of grew the scope of this project a little bit. We noticed that special education was actually sharing that same space that was inadequate for music and art, and obviously therefore inadequate for special education. As part of this, with current times, we saw this as an opportunity to also create a secure entrance that meets modern security needs for high schools. And of course, the mission from the beginning was always to create a long-range plan to create a performing arts center. At the same time, we have accessibility issues, in which we noted that the high school needs an elevator. Now, from the beginning, even before we were hired, the committee had determined that this project would be a phased project. The first phase was right about the time we were hired. You actually started and did some site improvements for a safer drop-off sequence there. The second phase is what we're tackling now, which is the education area. And the third phase, which would be a future phase, would be a performing arts center. And we have kind of kept that mission all along. The designs we're about to show you can accommodate a future addition of a performing arts center.
Thank you, Lance. I'm just going to quickly tell you a little bit about the schedule. As we are right now, here's just an abbreviated schedule. Where at the moment, as Lance pointed out, we've already gone through what we call the pre-design, the schematic design, and design development. And at each of those phases, we sent it to our estimator to give us a price to make sure we were still on budget, and we were still sticking to what the voters approved. So we've just finished up design development, and we're in construction documents right now. Actually, we're working on our 50% construction document set that will lead to the final construction documents that we'll send out for bidding at the end of, or the middle of June. And then through July, we'll do bidding out to contractors. And then in August, construction will begin.
So at each phase, we've tried to be very good tenants with the taxpayer dollars. So each phase, every time a decision is made, we've updated the overall budget for the project and verified that it's within what the voters approved to keep us on budget or below budget. On the left-hand column, you'll see what we started with. This was what was voted upon in November. And we've broken it down into a few categories that are kind of state standards. The first category is administrative costs. These are all the upfront costs. Some of these things are allowances, like legal counsel. We've set allowances for that. On the right-hand column, you see where we are today with the budget, verifying our allowances, the right allowance to continue to carry, and how are we developing. So we're right on track with administrative costs, and I think we estimated those very well. The next category, Jay, if you just switch the screen.
Next category is furnishing.
The next category is furnishings and equipment. Now, furnishings and equipment, we know that during construction, We'll have the opportunity to select furnishings to go into each of these spaces, the equipment, and it's everything from chairs and desks to computer equipment and interactive whiteboards, projectors, that kind of thing. It is a technology-rich space, as most spaces are, as most modern classroom areas are, and it's well equipped for that, but we wanted to make sure we had a budget for furnishing equipment. Those decisions will be made during construction, and that'll be a separate bid process, which we'll guide the committee through. At this time, we have an allowance based on state standards on a percentage of construction. It equates to $937,000. And then the final category here is contingencies. To keep us safe and keep us moving, we have carried contingencies throughout the project. We have a bid contingency, which essentially gives us the ability to accept bids on bid day. It's about 5%. We have a project contingency, which we would carry into construction, that gives you the ability for unforeseen conditions. And that's another 5%. Any of these contingencies that remain unspent at the end of the project would either be returned to the project or returned to the taxpayer. That's up to the group, to the school district. And we do have some contingencies in there for utility company rebates, which we're seeking to try and get to maximize our utility company rebates that we can. The next category is the fees and services. This is the engineering fees, the architecture fees, the reimbursement costs for printing. There's also independent testing. With every public building, there are a number of independent testing agents to make sure that the construction goes well. There is a commissioning agent, which ensures that the mechanical systems are fine-tuned, and there is testing and inspection, and there will be a clerk of the works in the project. The clerk of the works has yet to be engaged, but we'll be engaging them with the school district to ensure that everything is built according to plan, along with our engineers and architects visiting the site periodically. We have had site data that we've gathered to date, and we have been able to start that permitting process as well. And those things are going very smooth, as you can see, right on budget for all of those processes. And the final category is the real big cost, which is the construction costs. The starting budget was roughly $8.1 million. We broke out the elevator project, as we did apply for some grants through the Department of Education to see if we could get funding for that. Overall, today, we're at about $9,050,000, which is right on budget. We still have, we carried sites separately, and we still have an early design contingency built into this number as well. And the reason we're doing that is just because of the fluctuations we're seeing in the market right now. The market, we believe, is going to be very favorable for bidding, given that a lot of people are interested in work, and particularly a project like this that is a full 12 months of construction. But we want to make sure that we are proceeding cautiously, and so we are carrying a contingency just for that itself. Overall, as you can see, our roughly $13.4 million project right now is under budget, and if things go the way we're predicting, we're going to be significantly under budget, which is going to be great news. I say under budget, it's just under budget, so essentially on budget today.
Yes. So I'm going to take you in through a couple design images, and I know some of you have seen these in your package before, and hopefully you have some questions as we go. We added a couple extra images that we talked about, so I'm going to go kind of quickly through these, but I'm more than willing to go back if there's any ones you want to highlight on as we go. Just kind of a walking tour through the school. So the first one is, as you walk in the front doors, there is a set of doors that are directly ahead of you. And if you arrive after school starts, these get locked down. So everyone that arrives after that point has to be buzzed into the office and sign in as part of the procedure. So we've really looked at safety and security as one of the keys to this. So if you do have to get buzzed into the office to sign in, you'll be greeted at this by a person at this desk, and this desk pulls out some of the features that you're going to see in the rest of the design of the school, some of the colors and the materials. But from the person sitting at the desk, they have views outside. So this is their view looking up the walkway, so they can see who's coming towards the school. So it's very secure point in the school right there in that way. And they also have a view looking into the commons of the school to see where students are coming in the other entrance and this commons area in the school. So this becomes kind of the hub, the secure hub as the school of the school. Stepping here, that's the space we were just looking in with the big LHS on the wall. Now you're in the gallery space or the common space here. And you can see there's a grand stair that takes you up to the upper level. This will probably be the main stair that most students will use. It also has a wall that's a feature wall that allows the art to change. So student art can really be on display here, because this is one of the things, you have such great culture of different art that we want to be able to display it. So this wall becomes a gallery space for that, and also becomes a congregation space for the students to be in, with them being supervised very easily through the offices that are right nearby. So that's that space. This is just another look at that space where you can see that wall, that display wall a little bit better. And then you see these two big blue portals. These take you in, the upper one takes you into the classrooms on the upper level, and the lower one takes you into the art gallery area. So we're going to go down there first. So in the art gallery area, again, we really want to highlight student art. So we have these changeable displays that will happen in the center for student art to take place. And then there's also space around for student art. There'll be track lights so we can adjust the lights to shine on the art, and just a neutral palette so the art can really be the pop here. A little bit about the flooring. We had some fun with the flooring, and we worked with the committee. The flooring is almost this blue river that flows through the school. It flows through this gallery and then back out into the lobby. So that's kind of this movement that happens in the floor. And again, just more spaces for student art to happen. This is one of the classrooms. This is paint and drawing, just a flair for what the classrooms will look like. We want to get a lot of that natural light. This has got north night light, which is perfect for drawing, and just neutral colors. So again, the art can pop. So we have whites and we have just a soft yellow that will just brighten the space. The flooring is a wood floor, a very warm flooring. Just another look at that same room. One of the other rooms is choral, and the two music rooms, we're able to get some volume in these spaces, which will really enhance the sound in these spaces. We've been working with acoustical engineers to balance the amount of reflective and absorptive materials we're going to need in here to get the right acoustics in these spaces. But we also want this nice bright space. That's what you can see here. And then we did give, you'll see a space here for student art. Again, a mural space for art to happen in these rooms. Going back to the common space, if you go up the stairs, at the top of the stairs, there will be a little space that could be used for a concession stand where you could buy a drink, or you could buy some popcorn or a donut or a muffin or something like that. And then you'll see a bench there where there's a gentleman sitting, and that's a place for charging stations so students can charge their devices, and just kind of a space that students can be and can make their own, but also well supervised by staff in this area. And there's just another view of this space, that grand stair looking down. As we move through the upper classrooms, these are standard classrooms. However, there is space here to do an art gallery. So we do have a space for student art to happen up here, as well as natural light pouring in here. And then we have single user restrooms also up here, same on the lower level. So single user restrooms throughout. At the end of the hall, you get kind of a little peek of something different happening down there. And at the end of the hall is where the drama room would happen, which is to begin to foster that performing arts space that may happen in the future, to build that program. So they have a marquee outside that can be changed. And then inside the classroom, it has an operable wall. So one of the classrooms can join the other classroom to give you a much bigger space. And we're just showing here that there's a space for rehearsals or practices, or just to foster everything that's going to happen with this group. The exterior, and I apologize, I went through the interior pretty quickly, and I'm more than happy to go back and talk later, but I'll take you through the exterior real quick. So the exterior, what we've done is we've really emphasized the big blue. We have a big blue arch that tells you, welcome to Lewiston. So we have the Lewiston High School name on the outside of the building, and then the big blue arch that happens that tells you this is the entry to the school. And as you approach the arch, one of the little details we have here is it does say welcome, and we try to use every language that we understand spoke in your school, so that this really becomes a welcome for everyone in the community as they enter the arch. So very subtly, you can see it in the bottom side of the arch saying welcome in different languages. If we move around to the back side of the school, we understand a lot of people come from the neighborhoods by the football field and up the path. So this will definitely be an entrance also. A little bit smaller in scale, not as big as the front entrance, but this is another blue entrance that would pull students into the school as they approach. They walk up to that entrance. The last view is just the exterior view at night. So in the evenings, we've designed this so that there'll be subtle light to make the building glow, and also to try to make the languages, the welcomes, glow on the outside also. So this is a night view of what that would look like. So I know we went through that pretty quickly. Hopefully that gave you a flare of what we've been working on the last 6 months or 5 months or so. And I'm sure you have some questions, but we want to be conscious of your time. So I'll turn it back over to Jay Dufour to lead us through that.
Thank you, guys. Great job by both of you. Really appreciate all the work you and your team have put in. Ms. Roy, I'd love for the school committee to weigh in on any comments and questions, and I'm sure Mr. Damon has some input as well.
Great. Yeah. Wow. That was a great presentation. Thank you so much. Everything looks beautiful. I do want to put it out there for committee members if they do have questions about details, but I would like to give Mr. Damon a chance to say, since he's on the committee, to say a few things about it.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. It's been an interesting process, to say the least. The folks from La Valley Brensinger have been really responsive to stuff that's come out of the committee. I think we had about 20 or 25 members who were very actively involved in this. A couple of things that have come up recently that we're still under consideration was we have the new entrance that says Lewiston High School. And one of the things that was brought up is this is also the Regional Technical Center. So we're still working a few of those details out. But we need to make sure that we recognize that because it's such an important piece of what's going on in the building. Having head kids years ago that were in the band, to think that there might be a space like this now finally for instrumental music, to me is just, it's long overdue. And I'm very impressed with what's been proposed. It's bright, it's new, it's going to be just a huge addition to the high school, and the security upgrades are very robust as to where they've taken it, probably more so than it would have been even 2 or 3 years ago because of the nature of where we're at. But I couldn't be prouder of what's been proposed, and I really feel that we're going to be able to produce it on budget, and if we can, I'd say we're off to the races.
Awesome. Thank you. If my daughter, who was a drama major and music and drama got her through high school, and she would have loved to have something like this, and it will draw the community into our building. So if you have questions, could you just go ahead and raise your hand? Mr. Majerus Collins.
Yeah, I mean, this is outstanding. This is so exciting. This is just I'm so glad that our community is placing music and the arts at the forefront of Lewiston High School in this dramatic and visceral and substantive way. I can't say enough good things about it. This is a very minor question, and it's mostly just to satisfy my curiosity. concession stand aspect on the second floor of the expansion presumably would tie into a hypothetical performing arts center built down the line. Is that being located in a place that makes sense for that, or are there other rooms that would tie into concessions, or are we just thinking maybe students want a little coffee shop? I guess I'm a little confused about that.
Yeah, the thought process was it's for the students right now, that the students, to try to get them to be in a space that is very supervised, which is a multi-level space for them to be in that. The thought isn't necessarily for the future edition. We think something would probably be closer to the new edition when that happens. But the thought process for this is for the current students as they arrive in the morning and in the afternoon.
That's really cool. I'm so glad that's included.
Jay, do you have a something that shows where the Performing Arts Center might tie into the global plan for phase 3?
I definitely can. If you can just give me 1 second, I can dig on my computer and find something for you.
While he's doing that, just to add, we have a concession-like setup now downstairs. It's much too small, but our functional life skills program runs it, and that's how they raise some money for some of their travels. So it's kind of a nice connection and a bridge for them too.
Thanks, Jake. Other questions while Mr. Doherty? Yes, Ms. Whitlow.
It's beautiful. I think so. Does anything else have to be voted on as far as anything? Okay. So I don't know. I'm confused because before it was called the Performing Arts Center, right? And then it got changed to expansion. Because it had to get voted on, it was put out there more as far as not just performing arts, which I'm completely in favor of. Don't get me wrong here. But now so the public is saying had to vote on something that was more than just performing arts. They were looking for something more, other classes, regular classes. So why did we put all of the attention on just the performing arts, I guess?
So I just a quick, and other people feel free to jump in. There are 9 additional classrooms upstairs as well. I think because the presentation is just a quick one, they were highlighting some key spaces that people were in very much support of. There's also renovated spaces that are in the current building as part of this project that do bring functional life skills up to a modern space on the main floor. And so it allows for other things. So those things are included in the overall expansion project. I just think we're trying to be mindful of time.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I just didn't want the community to be opposed of it, and but I think it looks fantastic. Thanks, guys.
And Ms. Hawkins, did you have a question or a comment? No. Okay.
Tanya,
Mr. Damon?
Tanya, I think one of the things that we proposed, that what we're proposing to the voters and that they really accepted, was that there were a number of real serious deficiencies within the building, and this addressed many more of them than just the art department. The security issue, the accessibility issue, and for the future, potentially for the Performing Arts Center, which, you know, we don't really have it. We're one of the few high schools that's been, it's been 45 years since we built the high school. It should have been there to begin with, and still not there. And it won't be after this, but it does address a lot of the concerns that Jay and Jake have. They have 17 teachers that typically would be wandering the halls on carts because there aren't enough classrooms for them to actually have a classroom. And this addresses a lot of those issues, and it addresses some serious safety issues, not only from the outside, but from the inside, and that there really is not an elevator within the building that could assist EMS or somebody if there was an issue. So that's part of what this is about, and that will also help address the issue with the Performing Arts Center when it's built.
Thank you for adding that, because that was one of the biggest things about the carts and teachers not having their own space. So yeah, that quick presentation looked like it was only a couple of classrooms. I'm glad we had some clarification on that. Jay, did you?
I did find the image. Well, I made an image real quick, but I will show you exactly what you're talking about. And I do want to point out, we did a bridge version. Yes, there are general classrooms, and I can quickly show you those right after this. So the main entrance, the big blue arch, would be in this location, if you can see my screen right here. The admin would be here, overlooking the entry, and the classroom wing that we're talking about is over here. This really rough box I just drew really quickly is where the Performing Arts Center would go. The thought process is we can use the grade change because there's a whole story difference between this parking lot and this parking lot to actually nestle the Performing Arts Center into the hill area right here. The new elevator is here, so it kind of ties in really nicely, elevator, entry, and all the forms together right there. I apologize the crudeness of just quickly doing this, but that was the thought process, and that's what we've been trying to do from the beginning. If you would like me, I can quickly show you just the overall classrooms. This is a colored plan showing some of the floor layout, but what it does is it begins to show you we have a bunch of art classrooms here on the lower level. We have fundamentals of art, we have digital art, we have photography, we have painting and drawing, ceramics, and then the two music rooms, instrument, choral, and a MIDI lab. But on the second level is what we were just talking about with the additional classrooms. So as we tie into the existing building, we have all these other classrooms that are general purpose classrooms that will have a function. And then that one specialty room I did talk about was the drama room down at the end. And that's that one space down there.
Excellent. Thank you. Other questions? Okay. And I just want to thank the group for coming and presenting to us in this very strange way, but we're all doing it now. So I appreciate you answering questions and, you know, giving us a really nice visual of what this is going to look like. Yeah, thank you so much.
And we just want to thank you and the committee. It's really been a pleasure. We think this is going to be an awesome project, and we're really excited about it. So thank you for letting us be part of it. It's really good.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. We're excited too. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. So that takes us to agenda item number 6, to receive and approve the recommendation of teacher evaluation and professional growth program adjustments. And this will be Chief Academic Officer Karen Paquette.
Good evening, everybody. So we have a few adjustments to the teacher evaluation system that we are requesting be made because of the closure. So I just have some notes, so I apologize if I'm turning away from you. I just want to make sure I cover everything. The commissioner announced in April, after the closure, that local districts would be able to make their own decisions with regard to how to finish the teacher evaluation cycles. And the reason for needing sort of that permission was that it could potentially put us out of compliance with the law, as the state law as it sits. So all recommendations regarding the teacher evaluation system by law are under the purview of a local steering committee, and LPS has a steering committee that is made up of myself, the HR director. We have select building admin, and the majority of the membership on that committee is LEA appointed teachers. And Sue Williams, our educator effectiveness director, helps facilitate those conversations. So the group examined some possible options once the commissioner came down with this announcement, and the goal was that any adjustments to the evaluation process would do no harm to teachers just because school was closed. So when we looked at what changes needed to be made, and all of this is explained in further detail in the document that was in your packet, but I'll give you some highlights. The committee really wanted to honor the work that has been done related to the evaluation cycle by teachers and evaluators, as opposed to just giving a blanket effective rating or moving forward with something that wouldn't honor that work. So the biggest challenge that this brought to us was that normally teachers would use a student measure as part of their evaluation process, which those are called SLOs, which you may have seen in the document that was shared. With the school closure, those SLOs we weren't able to complete the year and see what the growth of the students would be in the same fashion that was set out in the goals originally. So to remedy that and to sort of address that, teachers who would have fewer than 2 measures, because within their evaluation cycle, as it states now in our handbook, they have within their 3-year cycle, they have the opportunity to set goals for two student goals, and then, or they could do 3 within those 3 years, and they have the ability to use 2 of those towards their final summary rating. So because there was the possibility that teachers were not going to have that, the committee is suggesting that teachers would have the opportunity to choose whether or not they'd like to use one of the SLOs, one of the student growth measures, so the one that they may have done in previous years, or choose to not use an SLO at all to be calculated into their rating. So the other adjustment that I wanted to just share and point out relates to teachers whom at least half of the required minimum number of observations over the 3 years were not completed due to a variety of circumstances. That could be circumstances that relate to the teacher's health and the inability to maybe be in school, or the closure, or anything in between. So that the committee feels that such a small number of observations, if they weren't completed, would represent a deficit in the amount of evidence necessary for a fair summary performance rating. So they are suggesting that these teachers would automatically get a effective rating based on the closure. And really, when we look at the number of teachers that would impact, that would be a very few teachers who would be impacted by that. Sorry, I want to make sure I get my notes. All of these things that are outlined here, like I said, went through the steering committee and revised and looked at over the course of the last 2 months, and were unanimously approved in late April. And they're just asking for the committee to approve what they've recommended, or so that we can move forward with ending the year with this evaluation process, and that evaluators and teachers can complete what they need to complete.
Thank you, Ms. Paquette. I would add that this is something that I've seen other districts do as well, as far as making these accommodations and following the guidance. So I would just open it up to the floor for questions to Ms. Paquette about this process, if anybody has any. Okay, seeing none. Mr. Naaman?
Does this have an impact on as to whether or not they move from one like a preliminary contract in the first 2 years to a third year? Does this part of what this evaluation is referring to?
Superintendent Finn, were you waving to answer, or did you want me to answer? He's on mute.
That must mean he wants you to answer.
I saw a pen on the screen and he's my guy, so I had to wave to him. He was right there.
Go ahead, Ms. Paquette.
Okay. So your question is in relation to teachers who are being evaluated and moving from, say, a probationary status to a continuing contract status. Is that what you're referring to? It would actually work in their favor. So no, it wouldn't have any impact on that at all.
Okay, we're going to go to, I need a motion to approve.
Move, we approve the changes as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Parks?
Yes.
Mr. Damon?
Yes.
I say yes. Mr. Majerus Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Whitlow? I didn't hear you. Did it?
Yes.
Oh, I think you're muting and unmuting so fast. Okay, thank you. Ms. Hawkins? Yes. Mr. Potvin?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Ms. Ray?
Yes.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. And we're going to discuss agenda item number 8, and then we will discuss the 2 items that were removed from the consent agenda. So this is really just a discussion about the next meeting, June 1st, which would be, I would propose that we meet in person with social distancing like we did the last in-person meeting. And I think that, we can have technically, the 6 feet apart, so we can have people go in the room next door if they're coming in for presentations, and we can have the live feed in there for public, and then people can come in for public comment. So I'm just wondering if you all have thoughts about that, and I'd just like to go through everybody and kind of hear what you think about moving back to our space at the Dingley building. Ms. Parks?
I absolutely do not like Zoom meetings at all. It's harder for me to process information. It's easier in person. So I would be very happy to go back to live meetings in person.
Okay. Mr. Damon?
I agree with Ms. Parks. The Zoom meetings they don't really work well for me. But I'm wondering if there's a possibility, depending upon schedule, if we could use city council chambers where that's wired for the recording and everything. It seems like that's a larger space.
It's something we could ask about. There's also probably spaces that we've used at the high school, but it's definitely that probably is harder for the technology piece. So yeah, I can inquire about that, Mr. Damon. I know that we do have the setup at the Dingley building, and the feed does go into that extra room. I just don't know what the space would be. So I can ask about that, but you're in favor of the in-person.
Oh, absolutely. I'm finding these meetings to be difficult, to say the least.
Okay. So I'm in favor of us all coming back together as well. And I prefer giving folks a chance to come and make public comment the way we're used to having that, as long as we can be safe about it. So I will ask Mr. Majerus Collins.
So I think I share everyone's, or potentially everyone's, frustrations with the Zoom format. I think that it has transparency problems for the public, and does not allow the kind of deliberations that folks expect from the school committee. I think everybody's been really doing their best with that, but the format is just flawed. I'm worried about coming back too soon. If the committee decides to meet in person, I'll be there. I'm 24. I'm not especially concerned for my own health, but I am concerned for everybody else's health and for the public's health. I also think that if we do decide to come back, which again, I would lean towards not doing that yet, but if we do, it's incredibly important that we offer all committee members the opportunity to participate via Zoom if they don't feel comfortable coming back.
Okay. I think, you know, we'd be, because it's June 1st, we'd be in compliance with the CDC guidance for, you know, 50 or under. I think we could have tried to push it for the 10, but I didn't want to go that route or even bring it up to you guys. So I appreciate that. Ms. Whitlow, your thoughts?
I mean, I like being home and doing Zoom. I obtain the information much better. But if it is, you know, recommended that we can all be, you know, 50 or less, you know, and then we could do our social distancing still to some degree, then I would have to be in favor of going back to in-person meetings.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hawkins?
I do much better in person. I get more information that way, I'll say. Along those lines, though, I've been doing fairly well with the Zoom meetings. Coming back in person would be good, but if Zoom is available and the recommendations still say keep a distance or whatever, just follow the recommendations, but I'm good with coming back in if we need to.
Thank you. Mr. Potvin?
Well, I was ready to come back 2 months ago, so you got me on board.
I had to get you on Zoom, not get you back to the building. Got it. Okay. Mr. Donovan?
I'm absolutely for coming back in person.
Yes, I had to keep you out of the building too, initially. And Miss Ray?
I am not in favor of coming back.
Thank you. Okay, so the majority of folks feel that we could come back. So I'm going to schedule our meeting. I will look to see if the space works better at City Hall. I think the access for people is the same, but let me investigate that and send something out to you guys. I do think that we have to look at the rules and make sure that we offer the opportunity for folks who feel or at high risk or don't feel comfortable can come in via Zoom. So I will send out information regarding our next meeting, but thank you for that discussion. And we will move on to the next item, which would have been the number 1 item on the consent agenda. So Mr. Potvin, you wanted to talk about this item. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Bobby, directly to you, how is this animal working? Certainly our spending habits have changed quite a bit in the past couple months. I notice the numbers don't seem overly large for a $90 million budget. So my question is, you know, are we spending at 50%, at 75%, 90%? Are we putting monies aside in a contingency fund to address next year or other upcoming expenses that we haven't even talked about yet? Is this going to be the practice until which point we can get back to some normalcy? What is the variance in the spending and what does that mean for the pocketbooks? Just the concerns from the public. We don't have a school system that's working right now, or it is, but it's working virtually in a different format, and people want to know where the money's being spent.
Okay, so you got a lot in there. I'm going to start with saying in your packet, you have the April financial statement in front of you. You're right, the spending is way down. I would expect that to happen. If you look at the financial statement, And I'll tell you, there's two benchmarks that I use when I look at these financial statements in school finance. The first one is, how are we trending based on where we are in the current fiscal year versus our spending during that time period? And that's why on this financial statement at the top, you'll see 83% of the year is spent with 17% remaining. I look at that and I say, okay, and I'm really worried about what's remaining. So I look at that and I say, well, 17% is remaining of the year, and we've got 34.5% that's remaining of the budget. And so one could say, well, there's two schools of thought on that. One could say, okay, that's really good, you got your spending down, but others out there would say you're not spending enough. So in this case, I'm very pleased with seeing that, only because of the situation that we're gonna, and I'll talk about that in a minute, that we find ourselves in. But the second benchmark that I use is what we've spent as of April 30th, 2020 versus April 30th, 2019. I don't have that in front of me. It's not in your board packet, but I can tell you that I've looked at it, and we're trending about 3 to 4% lower in spending, or less in spending, over last year. So I would expect that to be the case, just because we're not in school and we're not purchasing all of the things that we would typically purchase. I can tell you that there are adjustments that will be made to the financial statements, just normal adjustments during the audit process, which we haven't done yet. So that doesn't reflect in these financial statements. Now, you asked about things that we might be planning for. So yes, there are things that are on our radar. One of the things, and I'm just going to be very transparent, I'm very worried about a curtailment. Nobody's saying that that's going to happen. They're saying that it probably won't, but I'm thinking that maybe it will, and it's my job to think that way. And so I'm developing a plan that I will be presenting to Superintendent Finn that will help address that. And then at some point, if that comes down, then we'll discuss that as you know, in committee. The other thing that we're working on is, or considering, is that FY22 cliff. And so even though we're in FY20, we are trying to get an FY21 budget passed in July. My mind is on FY22 because there's a huge cliff that's coming and we have to plan for that now. So as far as underspending, let's just call it underspending in FY20, anything that we do not spend will hit the fund balance. That fund balance will help feed the FY22 budget. So, and we know that we've got a big cliff in FY22. So it's about strategy, it's about strategic planning, and being very fiscally conservative right now. You'll probably find, I'll be sending a memo to Superintendent Finn at some point within the next probably 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, asking for a budget freeze, not of the whole budget, but maybe freezing 30% or so. I haven't crunched the numbers yet. In anticipation of a curtailment that would help us in FY21. So there's a few things in the toolbox that we can use. Let's see, you had asked, I think in the beginning, back an hour or so ago, about expenses for COVID-19 and what we're doing with those. We're tracking those. They're on, we maintain them. Every department maintains them on a spreadsheet. And at some point very soon, I'll be taking that and asking for reimbursement from MEMA for the things that qualify. And then at the state level, I'm hoping that I think in the MEMA guidance, the state level has a bit of funding as well for reimbursement. So anything that we can seek reimbursement for, we absolutely are going to do that. And then you asked about contingency funds and setting up a contingency fund. We're not going to set up a contingency fund only because I don't feel that it's necessary. I think that as long as we have an adequate fund balance to help us, that is our contingency fund. Lewiston, we always use our fund balance for the next budget year. So I think that that will be adequate. I hope. And I think
You got it all covered.
I got it
Excellent.
covered. Okay.
Appreciate all the information. Sounds like you're on top of it, and that's,
Yeah.
I just wanted to see where our numbers were falling. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Monique, you're
Did
muted.
anybody have any questions? I saw that. Did anybody have any other questions for Miss Avery? Thank you very much for all that information. Mr. Finn?
Yes. Yes, you know, and this is something I had actually in my notes early on, but this might be an appropriate time to bring it up. By going through our COVID-19 update, it's also important that the committee is made aware that we are going to probably see an increase in unemployment claims. And that increase is in large part due to substitute teachers. We've got about 58 of those. This will go above and beyond what we had planned for. In addition to that, it's interesting because our HR department does receive notification from the Department of Labor if there's an unemployment claim filed by one of our employees who is unemployed due to a second job. And so this requires a lot of work to be done by HR to inform the Department of Labor that they've got to list Lewiston Public Schools on there. But if in the event that there is a mistake made on the paperwork or something to that effect, you know, there are legitimately some claims here that we normally wouldn't have either. So we will be putting guidance out to all of our employees who may or may not have a second job that they no longer are receiving income from, to fill out that form appropriately, to allow the Department of Labor to be made aware that they are still being paid by Lewiston Public Schools. Very, very important that folks do that. But it was the number one thing on my list here for the COVID update, but this is actually a very appropriate time to bring this up as well. We are going to see an increase in unemployment claims predominantly because of our substitute teachers. Bobby, is there anything you want to add to that?
I do. So any claims that we do not agree with, I want to assure this committee that we appeal them, and we're quite tenacious about that and quite aggressive about it. We do a great job at record keeping. We report to the DOL pay histories. So if there's anything that we just absolutely do not agree with, we go through the appeals process with a lot of aggression. We're nice, but we're quite aggressive about it.
So probably the important thing, hold on, Mr. Damon. I think the important thing is for folks to understand, because I know that claims are being processed so quickly right now that some of the paperwork and logistics behind it are not happening the way they usually do. And folks might be misrepresenting somehow that they're being paid from Lewiston schools still, but because they have a second job, they are filing for unemployment to help supplement what they would have been getting in that second job. So I think Ms. Avery, from your department, can you send out some clarification to all the employees in the school department so that they don't end up, because if they start getting benefits that they're not actually entitled to, they can end up in a bad spot where they have to pay that back later, and they didn't know that.
That is true. And like Monique had said, you know, I think that the DOL is just working fast and furious, you know, to get things processed. And yeah, we do our part to appeal. And yes, we can absolutely provide guidance to our employees to let them know that, you know, they could find themselves in a position once it's reconciled, you know, on the DOL's end, that they may end up having to pay money back. And that would be, that might be difficult.
Mr. Damon?
Yeah, one of the things that is different about this particular time is that most of the unemployment claims that were a direct result of COVID. under the CARES Act do not go against the employer. The state has taken responsibility for much of that. So that's helped to some degree. And of course, with the additional funds that are coming to anyone who's already collecting unemployment, those additional funds also are not being charged against the history and the record of the employer.
So we have not, our invoicing doesn't reflect that quite yet. I hope you're right, Mr. Damon, but so far we're still on the hook to pay that. And we do pay our bills on time, so we will continue to do so and fight it. But I hope you're right about that.
Yeah, that was part of what it was all about. We had several employees that we did furlough, and we've seen from our records already that they are actually not applying to our historic record and affecting our rate. And I assume the same would be true with the school department.
Okay, well, yeah, maybe we can get some more clarification on that. Would be super helpful, because then it wouldn't end up in an appeals process and be so laborious for our staff to have to go and then do all of those appeals. So I don't know, Bobby, if you can follow up on that, because that's great information. Thank you, Mr. Damon.
Yes, we can absolutely look into that. I wish that we knew that now. Like I said, our invoicing doesn't reflect that, but we will definitely be asking.
Excellent. Miss Hawkins?
I just wanted to say really quickly, after hearing the numbers and whatnot that you spoke about with the budget and being the 2 or 3% under what we usually are and whatnot, I was really, after our last meeting, I was a bit concerned because yes, we're getting this CARES money and it's going towards this and things are good and the mill rate will be lower. And that little part in the back of my mind that's always saying, oh God, doom is coming, was like, but what about the next year? Oh my gosh. So I'm glad I'm not the only one who's got that little voice back there saying, be careful. So thank you, Bobby.
Can I just, is that okay, Monique, if I just, that's a big voice in the back of my mind and it's shouting at me all day long and all night long.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the other item to discuss the.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I was just going to say, I think we have to vote on the transactions.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Because they were separate and that was something that was voted on. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. So do we must need a motion then, even though normally we wouldn't have it.
Move
it would
we
be
approve
part
the
of that.
transactions.
Thank you.
Second.
Perfect. Miss Parks.
Yes.
Mr. Damon.
Yes.
I say yes. Mr. Majerus Collins.
Yes.
Miss Whitlow.
Yes.
Miss Hawkins. Mr. Potvin.
Yes.
Mr. Donovan.
Yes.
Miss Ray.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to go to the other item that was brought up. And I'm not sure how to go about this because you're asking in particular for a specific piece of the personnel committee, the report out. So do you just want to start with discussion or are you looking to make a motion on something?
I can just make a motion, and then anybody can say what they want about it, and we can vote. And so I guess my motion would be to approve the personnel elections as presented, with the caveat that none of the contracts be contingent upon there being a fall sports season. And so, in effect, my understanding would be that motion would commit us to paying the coaches in the fall, whether or not we have a sports season.
Hang on, Ms. Avery. I need to wait for a second before we can have that. You can chime in.
I'll second it to move the discussion.
Okay, Ms. Avery, what did you want to add?
I'm wondering if the language couldn't be changed to include co-curricular as well. You're referencing only extracurricular.
Yeah, I would be fine with that. Let the language should not include I guess I would amend the motion subject to Mr. Damon's agreement on the second that, none of our stipends be contingent upon activities happening in a particular way in the fall, that we make the commitment to pay the folks that we're hiring no matter what happens in September.
Mr. Damon, are you cool with that change?
That's
discussion purposes?
That's expanding it. I mean, originally we were talking about fall sports, which is a finite period of time. When we start talking about there's Bobby, there's nearly 200 stipends total.
Yes. So, yes. The only reason why I include co-curricular is because there are co-curricular activities that happen during that same time period. So it's, for me, I just want to put it out there. It's an equity issue. It's a collective bargaining agreement. It's subject to collective bargaining agreement. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that.
So if we did amend the stipend contracts, are we going to have to go back and have some discussion with the unit to get them to accept it as well?
Chances are, I mean, that would be the right thing to do, to talk to the LEA, because it is part of a CBA.
And if they don't agree to it, then anything we're doing here is moot.
You could look at it that way. The other option is to bring it before the negotiations committee and have a discussion there.
Well, I'll go along with it for now to move the discussion. Hopefully others will weigh in.
Okay. I think this is as far as the collective bargaining agreement goes, we slot in stipends, but we don't have to hire people. The collective bargaining agreement is about, once we hire and offer a contract, what it has to say. So if we could choose not to hire coaches until later on, but if what we're saying right now is we're going to change the language of a contracted agreement, I don't know if we can do that. So I don't know if this is an appropriate motion.
It's not changing the language of the contract, it's the pay agreement. So we're not changing anything in the collective bargaining agreement, but we issue a pay agreement to a coach or advisor or whatever. And the language, the pay agreement is something we do. It's not subject to bargaining. It's not part of a collective, it's not part of the bargaining process at all. We just choose to do it. And so it would be subject to the activity actually occurring.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I'm just going to go around and ask if there are questions or discussion on this. Please raise your hand if you'd like to chime in. Ms. Ray?
So do we have guidance from the MPA on anything having to do with fall sports? I haven't heard anything, but I'm not quite as in tune.
I think Mr. Finn said earlier July. Mr. Finn, can you say that again?
Yes, we have guidance saying that they can begin individual workouts on July 6th. They can do new group workouts on July 6th. No contact, no scrimmaging. So right now we do know that if we hired our folks, I guess the good thing is that they know that they're being named the coach. So it's really important that they know I've got a position as the coach, and that here in about less than 2 months they'll be able to begin doing a lot of the preseason workouts. So they'd be paying for what they're actually doing, as they'll be able to host according to MPA. Now, will there be a season of competition? We can't say. We don't know that right now, so we've not gotten that guidance yet.
Thank you.
My comment on that would be that this personnel agenda, specifically looking at coaches, has effective dates of August for some and April for others. And so some folks, it may be that they have already performed these duties July 6th versus August 17th. I'm not sure what all the date discrepancies mean in terms of actual fulfillment of duties.
Ms. Avery? Do you have an answer?
Sort of, kind of. So I don't have it in front of me, but the April one has to do with a spring sport. The paperwork, because we were not allowed back into the building, that particular administrator was delayed in getting the paperwork to the school committee. So that's what that one is. I'm gonna say this, I hope I'm not wrong. But after speaking with Jason Fuller and Jake and pretty much understanding how it works, athletics start, a lot of them start in the summer. And so coaches begin their planning, they start doing summer training, and they're not necessarily paid during the summer per se. They actually get compensated for the fall. They just do that work to lead up to the fall. And so I think that that's what you're seeing is the discrepancy in dates isn't necessarily a discrepancy. It's just when that activity is going to begin. That's my guess. Like I said, I don't have it in front of me. Did you say there's a July and an August?
I was referencing Mr. Finn's July 6th date as the workout dates versus the August 17th date for high school athletic
That
coaches.
explains it. So the July is for August because the fall starts in the August, but a lot of these sports get going in July. And so they don't, like I said, they don't receive the compensation in July. They actually get it through the, it's very complex, but through the fall stipend. They just begin in the summer for summer sports. Is that making sense? They start early.
I know nothing about sports, so I believe you if you tell me they start early.
Yeah.
But shouldn't I don't know. That's just odd, is all.
I think it's being transparent. It's an attempt to be very transparent to say they're actually going to start the activity in July. Fall sports will start in August, but I mean, high schools across the state do this, to train and to get them ready for the fall.
Mr. Damon?
If we're talking only about the fall sports programs initially, because they do start early, versus most of the co-curricular stuff, which doesn't start until school is actually in session. I mean, in the event that we're delayed, and right now, we're one of the 4 counties that is still under this emergency proclamation. I mean, I think that we're in a sort of a unique situation here in that we may not be able to really get it going because we're still under this semi-lockdown. And much of the other parts of the state, which is MPA is statewide, they're not going to take into account that 4 counties are locked down still. I think I almost think that we're premature here, but I definitely wouldn't want to support the co-curricular stuff if we're delayed and we don't get into the co-curricular stuff. None of those contracts should be offered in my mind until actually school starts.
So I want to give everybody a chance to talk about this. So please, I'm just going to go in order because this is an important thing to have a comment on. So Ms. Parks, your thoughts on this?
I have no comment.
And Mr. Damon just made his comments. Mr. Majerus Collins has made some comments. Ms. Whitlow, do you have comments?
So what are we talking about here? I mean, are we talking about changing? I don't even know. Like, I just don't think that if we have a heads up that we shouldn't be paying coaches or anybody if the season is canceled or school's canceled, or we have a heads up now. People know. It was different in the spring, right? Because it was kind of like, bam, it hit us and we had to react and we had to take care of our people. But if you're not going to coach and you're not going to get paid, you're probably going to have a little bit of notice. You're going to probably put a lot less prep time in, and I guess you could collect unemployment. I don't know, maybe.
So yeah, I think the crux of this with the motion is that we're basically would be saying that we're paying folks no matter what happens. So that's what you want to think about when we put a vote out. Okay. Yep. Ms. Hawkins.
All this stuff, I really know nothing about how the sports seasons work. None of my kids have ever been involved in sports, so it's kind of like, okay, what's going on? Let's see. If we're having a fall season, we're having a fall season, they'll be paid. If we're not having a fall season, but they've done all the pre-work in the summer, we need to figure something out. Because if they still do all that work in the summer to get the kids ready, and then the season's canceled, that's gonna like, thank you for working so hard. Sorry, you're stuck, which really isn't. I don't think that's very fair or decent either. But at the same time, paying them for the whole season when there isn't one is kind of a little bit beyond. So I don't know. I don't know.
Mr. Potvin.
So really simply, I got this really special group of people in Ward 6 that generally write the checks to pay the bills of the city, and they're not particularly happy about paying people that are not going to actually be doing anything. So that's all I get to say with that.
Mr. Donovan.
I think Ms. Hawkins makes a good point. It's kind of be not too great to have have people put in work over the summer and then not pay them. But I also don't think. I mean, I was definitely in favor of paying the spring coaches because this crept up on us. But then now knowing what the situation we're in, I think that I wouldn't feel comfortable paying throughout the whole. If the whole season was canceled, I wouldn't be comfortable paying for the whole season if nothing's happened, no work is being done. Knowing, having known what's going on. So, but I do see the point in saying, okay, well, if they put in work in the summer, I don't want to just not pay them for that. So I don't know even when the payouts start. I don't know if they're. I think that's maybe what we were talking about earlier. Maybe the work starts in July. When do they start getting paid? Do they get paid in July or August or September?
It's later. That's what Miss Avery said.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
So yeah,
the pay is later, even though they start practicing in the summer.
Right. So is the pay all? It's not all at once, I'm assuming, or is it?
So we actually give our folks options on how they would like to be paid out.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it would just be. I'd like to explore some kind of option. I mean, if the season was canceled, don't pay for the canceled time, but pay for the time that was put in the past. And that's what I have. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Ms. Ray, did you have to add anything to your comments?
Yeah, so I feel that this is a different conversation than the one we had about spring extra and co-curriculars. Ms. Avery came to us and presented that we would continue that payment. We had a thoughtful discussion about that and move forward with that. My understanding from tonight is that Ms. Avery has presented that we give folks a heads up on the contracts and we allow them to plan. And so I think that planning time is very crucial. And we just spent a lot of time going through a budget and then coming back to look at where we could make reductions. And I think the first place that comes to mind in this upcoming year to preserve our funds for future things that could come up is the place where we can. I mean, we're not going to touch teacher and educator jobs, but these stipends are a place where we could have a small reserve. I also think about the precedent that would be set if we paid our fall coaches and there's no season. What about winter? And then what about spring? Not saying that the MPA or the state will make the decision to cancel those seasons as well, or even the fall. But as it mounts up over time, I think there's something to be considered there.
Thank you. And I would agree. I think that the heads up is important. What I do not want, though, and I don't know how this could be avoided, and I don't think it's a good practice anyway. I understand why, but I don't think that they should be holding practice until we know. I think that that doesn't give as much prep time for the preseason, you know, so that athletes can be conditioned, but they can be doing workouts on their own. And the NFL is going to be doing it, and that all the professional sports are having to do things differently. And if we had to have a shorter season because we had less lead time, those are all possibilities rather than just making a blanket statement that we're going to pay coaches whether we have a season or we don't. So I wouldn't be in favor of it this way. I liked the language that Miss Avery put in there because it's fair and people understand it's a risk. Coaches might say, well, if I'm not going to get paid, I'm not going to put my name out there, but coaches love what they do. So I don't think that's going to be the case. So that's my 2 cents. If we don't have any more discussion, we can take a vote. Oh, Mr. Majerus-Collins, go ahead.
Sure. So I think that Lewiston Public Schools deserves incredible credit for the commitment that we have made so far to ensure that this pandemic does not have an adverse financial impact on any of our employees. If we introduce this language, we will have abandoned that commitment. And that may be what folks want to do, but I think it's important to recognize that up until this point, we have made this commitment. We have said that people are not going to lose out on earnings because of the pandemic if they work for our system. And if we don't, if we have this language, then that's a commitment that we're retreating from. I think that there's no extra expenditure associated with this. We all hope and expect that things will be relatively normal and that we'll have a season, in which case it will cost whatever it costs. And if we don't have the season, then the cost won't be any higher than if we had it. But we will be doing right by our employees and supporting our coaches who work very hard and do an incredibly good job for, let's face it, a relatively small amount of money to begin with. So that's my argument, and now I guess we'll vote.
Okay. So we are voting on the motion. Basically, the motion will state that we will pay coach. Oh, Mr. Damon, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Would you please restate the motion so we're really clear on what we're voting about?
Mr. Finn, that's you.
Okay, so this is what I've got. This was from Member Collins. Member Collins, please correct me if I got this incorrect, but motion to approve personnel without the option to withhold pay for coaches if the fall season does not happen. So Mr. Collins would like that language taken out.
Right, and that's specific to the personnel agenda that we have in front of us, which I think has 3 coaches on it.
Does that help, Mr. Damon? Are you clear? Yes. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Did we add co-curriculars to that as well?
That's what I thought. That's why there was a little discussion between the first and second, was because I thought it covered all. Mr. Majerus-Collins, can you clarify that? All stipends is what I thought you had said.
Sure. I support paying all stipends, but when I looked at the personnel elections, we're only hiring 3 stipended positions that I can tell from the personnel elections. And so I don't necessarily know that we would even have, that it would be appropriate to have a motion to approve the personnel elections that also covered things that were unrelated to the personnel elections. So what I'm saying is, for the personnel elections that we're facing right now, all coaches and co-curricular stipends that are included, we would not be including any language in the contract that wouldn't have us not pay the stipend if the fall season was canceled or if we didn't go back to school in September or anything like that. I am more than happy to take the issue up in a general sense in 2 minutes or in 2 weeks or whenever, but I don't see how upon thinking about it further, I don't see how we can include a general commitment in the approval of the specific personnel elections in front of us. So it would just be for the personnel elections in front of us.
Well, I would agree with that, but we would set a precedent for the future. So that's why that discussion is so important, because we're not going to do it for some and not for all. So I think that's why it's important to keep in mind. So the motion is just for this personnel, but the likelihood that we would do something different for somebody else is probably not going to happen. Okay. Ms. Parks.
Just because there were so many double negatives, a vote in support of this supports paying our 3 coaches regardless of whether or not the season continues. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, I vote in favor of this.
Okay. Mr. Damon.
As long as it only covers those 3 that are listed in our document right now. Yes.
I do not vote in favor. Mr. Majerus Collins.
I vote yes.
Ms. Whitlow.
No.
Ms. Hawkins. Couldn't hear you. Sorry. Can you say that again?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Potvin.
No.
Mr. Donovan.
Do not vote in favor.
You do not vote in favor, or you do vote in favor? Yes or no?
I said do not.
Okay, no. And Ms. Ray.
No.
Mr. Finn, could you tell us the tally, please?
Yes. The tally is 1, 2, 3, 4 voted yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 voted no.
Okay. And do you need to state those names for the notes for Miss Sue?
Yes. So we had Ms. Parks voted yes. Mr. Damon voted yes. Ms. Roy voted no. Mr. Majerus Collins voted yes. Ms. Whitlow voted no. Ms. Hawkins voted yes. Mr. Potvin voted no. Mr. Donovan voted no. And Ms. Ray also voted no.
Okay. Thank you very much. And that's all the things that we had. Mr. Damon?
So if that motion failed,
Yeah.
it goes forward as proposed by.
No, we need to have a different motion. So as a chair, can I put a motion out there?
Sure.
You can.
I try not to do it because I want you guys to speak, but I put a motion that we include, that we approve with the language that Miss Avery had suggested, contingent upon there being a season.
Second the motion.
Is there discussion on that? Mr. Majerus Collins.
I still have the opinion that I have, but I also want us to hire the coaches. So I just want to be clear. I'm voting yes because I want to hire the coaches.
Okay. Other comments, questions, discussions? Okay. Did I get a second? Yes, Miss Ray. Great. All right. Miss Parks.
Yes.
Mr. Damon.
No.
I say yes. Mr. Majerus Collins.
Yes.
Miss Whitlow.
Yes.
Miss Hawkins.
Yes.
Mr. Potvin.
No.
Mr. Donovan.
Yes.
Miss Ray.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Finn, can you read those results, please?
Yes, our tally is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yes, and 1, 2 no. Fox voted yes.
Did you say who was opposed?
Yes, Mr. Damon voted no, and Mr. Potvin voted no.
Thank you. Okay.
Motion
There's
to
nothing.
adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, Miss Parks.
Yes.
Mr. Damon.
Yes.
I say yes. Mr. Majerus Collins.
Yes.
Miss Whitlow.
Yes.
Miss Hawkins.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Potvin.
No, I keep going. I'll vote no.
You're going to be on the record, Mr. Mr. Donovan,
Oh, yes.
Miss Ray.
Yes.
All right, we're all done. Be looking for an email with the meeting about the graduation requirements. And please, if you want to tune in or say something on Wednesday night, make sure you do that. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.